15 years ago. I was in Albuquerque, and we were on a road, and we experienced something that night.
We roll down our windows and we look out, and we just see like this, UFO.
Sort of coming towards us. And then it changed direction, and then it changed again the direction, and it skipped. And it disappeared.
Because this is also something mentioned by Bob Lazar.
Mm-hmm.
And you had an opportunity to meet Bob.
Yeah.
Did you bring this up to him?
I did. Fast forward a few years, now I'm in Washington, so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to ask the big question. So I told the lady in front of me, and as I'm talking to her, the entire table stopped talking. All the attention turned on me. You know, I just want to ask you, is there something out there? And she told me, you're not crazy. There's something out there. I was like, boom! Like, oh my God. During COVID, after I retired, I decided to go on a journey. I decided to do ayahuasca. When it started, I start leaving my body. I start levitating, and I'm not leaving my body going up like this. I'm leaving it going up like this, looking down.
You're seeing yourself?
Yeah. I even see my friend. He was texting someone. I told him, I said, you were texting this person. And he said, how did you know? I said, I went over your shoulder, man. I saw it. And I'm not alone. There's something that sort of lift me up. And I'm gonna draw it to you. No eyes, no mouth.
Yeah.
And it was communicating with me. You know, who are you? And it says, I'm you and everybody in the same time. I'm the air you breathe and the water you drink.
I'm the air you breathe and the water you drink.
I know why you're here. You're curious to know about what is consciousness, and I'm going to show it to you. And then I see the map, the planet, the solar system. It's like I'm going out. Like I zoom out, you know, from where I was, and I see the galaxies, the universe, the different dimension, to the point that at one point I'm like, it's too much, I can't take it anymore.
1994, I was probably about 6 years old, and I remember my big sister running outside from inside our house. I follow her out into the street. We get out into the street. The neighbors are out looking up at the sky. 4 or 5 houses down, there's a spinning disc with spinning lights all around it, and a spotlight coming down from the center. It must have been like, 40 feet above this house that was like 5 houses down from us. Don't remember anybody talking about it afterwards. The memory just ends right there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today we are joined by an amazing guest, Georges St-Pierre. George, thank you so much for doing this. This is unexpected, I think, to a lot of the viewers. They're like, what is Georges St-Pierre doing on this podcast?
I'm happy to be here. And thank you for having me a few weeks ago with Lou Elizondo.
Mm-hmm.
Really happy that you allowed me to come here and have a conversation with him.
Yeah, it was incredible. And, you know, obviously the things that are spoken about off camera often, like we get into like some deeper stuff, right? And more things that are speculative. So it's not, you can't really say it on camera because it's not sure. And so, but those are the fun conversations.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff sometimes that when you talk about it, a lot of people will roll their eyes back, and it will touch your credibility.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'm passionate about UAPs, and it's a subject that I'm very interested in. And when I found out that Louis Elizondo came here, I was like, man, he's one of the guys that I always wanted to meet.
Yeah.
And to have the opportunity to do it, to have a conversation with this guy, it was amazing. And when that happened, the weekend before, I was in Washington.
That's right.
I had an opportunity to meet with some high-rank military in the United States, because it was during the inauguration weekend. I was not there really for the inauguration. I was there because of with some of the guy of the UFC. John Jones was there, Bo Nicol, and
Connor. And,
yeah, exactly. A lot of guys were there. A lot of the professional athletes were there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an opportunity to go, and I took it because I had the chance to meet different people. It was a great opportunity. I would have been a fool to not take it.
I would have taken it. I think most people take that opportunity.
Of course. I mean, it's a chance of a lifetime, an opportunity of a lifetime. So I met a lot of people, but of all the celebrity that I've met that weekend, I met Zuckerberg. I met a lot of celebrity, but for me, the thrill of my weekend, it was to be able to sit down with some of the high-ranked military, some of the guys that, you know, when you want to talk about UAPs, secret program and stuff like that, these are the guys that knows the answers, and had amazing conversation. And still to this day, a lot of these guys I'm friend with. We text each other, and I made some great friends there, and it was just an amazing weekend.
Wow, that's so wait, how are you okay saying how did you get into that? Like, what happened there during those like interactions that, like, because it's weird to go up to someone and be like, so what about the UFOs? Like, like, how did that conversation start?
Well, so the way it started is the first dinner. It was a Friday night. The first day that I arrived in Washington, I had a dinner at night, and I get introduced to these guys with Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy is a former UFC fighter,
Green Beret,
and he's the guy that on the field, like he's the like a cowboy, he's the one who do the dirty job on the field, and he introduced me to a lot of these guys, and through Sarah Averano, I get introduced to a lot of the people in different branch of the military there, and we had dinner, and a lot of the veterans, a lot of the military people are big fans of mixed martial arts, so they knew who I was. And
I mean, to be fair, a lot of people know who you are, not just in the military.
But that's one of the reasons why I was able to get in touch with these people. So the first dinner that we had, it was like about maybe 12, 15 people around the table, and we didn't know each other. Some of these guys, like almost, I mean, actually, except from Tim that I know for a few years, all the other people around the table I had never met before, and we all introduced each other, and I didn't realize with who I was sitting until at one point during the dinner, I was thinking, I was like, you know what, if I want to ask the question, that's the time to do it, because I might never ever had another opportunity in my life to ask this question. Maybe I'm gonna look like a fool, and they all gonna make fun of me, thinking, oh, I'm brain damaged or whatever, or maybe they're gonna tell me what they are allowed to tell me. So everybody was talking to the people next to them, because it was a big table, and at one point I was like, you know what, I had a conversation with different people, but I talked to one of the person that was in front of me. I asked she was a lady, and I asked her, I said, I always wanted to ask you this question. One day, and I told her one of the adventure that I had that one day, and I was in a few years ago, before my fight with Matt Serra.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 15 years ago. I was in Albuquerque, and I was in a car, and I was with Mike Van Arsdale, who's a former UFC fighter, Rashad Evans, Ali Abdelaziz, who's Khabib and Islam Makhachev manager, who was a training partner of mine, and another guy named Alejandro. He's Mexican, but I can't remember. I don't know what he became. I lost contact with him. And Alejandro and I were in the backseat. Mike Van Arsdale was driving. Rashad Evans was on the passenger seat. And we were on a road, and we saw something. We experienced something that night that all five of us, like, it's undeniable. Like, we saw something, like, and
well, what did you see? Was it like lights in the sky, or was it?
Yeah, it was a light sort of coming towards us. And when it happened, I had an impression and I don't have it's not a certainty, but I was under the impression that sort of the time sort of stopped. Not the car, but the car kept rolling. But like, when you get so intensely,
like you're mesmerized.
Yeah. Like all of us were like we only had focus on that thing. So it came towards us, and then it changed direction, and then it changed again the direction, and it skipped, and it disappeared. And for that brief moment, it's sort of like everything else around us didn't matter. It was only this. Like we were like all of us like silence, and we saw this thing. And after that, when it skipped and it disappeared, all of us were like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And the crazy thing about it is the way I saw it and the way my friends saw it, it was different because there's no point of reference. I saw something that there was no wings, there was no, it was no noise, but we were inside of a car. But I remember seeing an interview of, I think it was Rashad or Ali Abdelaziz talking about that thing.
Like around 2010, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm with GSP, Ali Abdelaziz, who's now like the manager of a lot of UFC fighters. And we're right on the highway. The traffic is starting to slow down. It like slows down to like almost a crawl. And we're like, why is everybody stopping? Why is everybody stopping? And then we start to look and see where everybody's looking. And then we roll down our windows and we look out and we just see like this, UFO, because of the way it was moving. It just didn't, it was that typical UFO movement where it was like moving and then it like would stop and like defying gravity for a bit. And then it just stayed there for a second. And, the light pattern was weird as well too. And as everybody's sitting there watching it, it then just like shot off.
And the time that it lasted, and it didn't correspond to exactly what I saw. So I was thinking, if I talk about it publicly, I'm going to look like a liar because they don't describe the same thing. They all have their different description of what they've seen. Like I remember, I think it was, one of them said it was like almost a minute. And for me, it was only maybe 10, 15 seconds, if I remember.
Wow.
So we all have a different experience from that moment. So fast forward a few years now, I'm in Washington. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ask the big question. So I told the lady in front of me, and as I'm talking to her, the entire table stopped talking. They all the attention turned on me. So I told her what I saw, and I asked her. I say, I just want to ask you, am I crazy, or did we all collectively became crazy for a few seconds and saw something like an illusion, or is there something out there that are not us,
Yeah.
And she told me, you're not crazy. There's something out there. I was like, boom, like, oh my God. Like it and these are the people that knows, like, because they're that's what they do, like if someone would know that it's those guys.
What was the the atmosphere after that?
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Since that weekend, I mean, now I sleep good, but the next few days after that weekend, it got me thinking so much that I had a hard time sleeping at night because these are the sort of questions that keep me up at night.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of these guys. I asked them a lot of questions, and man, this is insane. It is so crazy that I would be very reluctant to publicly. And it's not me, it's them. Yeah. A lot of them, what they told me, and a lot of stuff that I've read or like seen as conspiracy theory, but what they told me fit what I've read, and I'm like, that can't be true. But
wow,
I would be very reluctant to go publicly and talk about what I've read and what they told me, because it will attack my credibility. Yeah. People will roll their eyes and will like, GSP just lost his mind. He's brain damaged. This is no way. But I mean, it's just crazy. And I know you dive deep into this stuff, so you can understand a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
This is pretty insane.
It is, and it's one of those things that, like, when you say it out loud, you know, you're like, God, that sounds just absolutely made up. Like, it sounds like science fiction.
Yeah.
But the, you know, truth I've found in my research is often much stranger than fiction. And that's something that more I look into it, the more that's becoming true. And one of the things is, like, first of all, like, the fact that you're even just talking about this and being open about it, I think is really healthy. I don't, like, maybe 10 years ago, this would have been considered a really touchy podcast to do. But I think in today's landscape, isn't that surprising to a lot of people? They're kind of like, well, it's good. It's good that more people are understanding. Because I do believe that in 10 years' time, maybe even less, that if you don't believe that there's something going on, you're the conspiracy theorist. I think that more people are kind of coming around to this idea that, okay, all right, we're being visited, or they're already here or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think I consider this very important is, you know, because of what's going on in the world, there's a lot of wars, there's a lot. And I feel that if we found out that we're not alone, it will kind of unite us. We will stop fighting over some stupid differences. You know what I mean? And we'll get together better. And there's a lot of things that could change the entire world. The energy thing, you know, like, if this thing is true, this technology is true, this can be used for the benefits of mankind. You know what I mean? And man, it can change the world. And I for me, I think it would be important to have maybe not a full disclosure on this thing, but at least more disclosure on the matter, because it will be beneficial to the world.
Yeah, great point. You know, something you just said there too is, like, not full disclosure, and I agree with that. I think most people who are familiar enough with the topic also agree with that there needs to be. We just need to get it out of the way that this is real.
Yeah.
Like, just that. Let's just get past that barrier right now, because we're so slowly approaching it. And what's happening is that more things are coming out faster than we're able to disclose it.
Yeah.
Right. And so there needs to be, like, we need to just bridge that gap and say, hey, these things are real. This is happening. We are being visited. We're not alone. Start there.
You know, Chris, most people, like, if you talk to most people, are not even aware that, you know, you say UAPs. There's things that flies, and not only flies, that goes under the water, that are picked up by a very sensitive military instrument, and they don't know what it is. I mean, it's been disclosed. It's been declassified since, I think, it's 2017.
Yeah.
It was in an article in the New York Post.
Yeah.
But most people are not aware of that. Most people still think it's not true. Like, I mean, you can research it. It's true. It's been out. The cat is out of the box, so to speak.
Yeah.
But most people are not aware of it.
No.
And I don't understand why the media don't talk more about it. I mean, it's one of the... I mean, are we alone? Are we... Like, even if we don't have the evidence to really know if we're alone or not, but this is very important. I mean... You have a certain object that flies over a sensitive military installation and are picked up by an instrument. I mean, man, it's something to talk about, and nobody talks about it. I'm like, you have to dig in to find out about it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's crazy to me. It's important.
Very important. It's arguably
the implication of it. It's huge.
Yeah, the most important thing. It's you know, and this is interesting because it also ties into, you know, a lot of the other stuff that you're interested in, and you know, ancient civilizations. You know, this sort of idea of, you know, maybe this cyclical civilization thing happening, perhaps, or like our lost technology that we might have had, because you've been traveling the world recently, doing side quests, which is pretty cool. You know,
oh, you did your homework, you know, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, you've been, you know, you did the main quest, you know, greatest pound for pound fighter, UFC champion. You've done all these amazing things, and I think, you know, it's kind of cool to see what you're doing now, because you're like, man, I did all this stuff. Now what? Right? What next? And now you're looking deeper. Now you're like, well, what's the meaning? Where do we come from? What's happening? And you're going to places like Baalbek, Egypt, and all these amazing places. So what kind of fuels that quest?
Knowledge. And I know that a lot of these archaeological sites, it's still an enigma. You know, they have a rough idea of when it was built and how it was built, but there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. And if someone says that they know everything, that's not true. And the weekend I had in Washington too, one thing they confirmed to me is that, and I knew that before, but they just told me that a lot of the ancient texts, a lot of the religious texts that we read, and a lot of the ancient texts that talks about angelic beings, flying chariot, and stuff like that, are probably account of
UAP, UFO.
UAPs and things that but they didn't say flying saucer or a spaceship, because it was outside of their vocabulary. It was outside of their frame of reference. So they couldn't, the way they describe it, it was the way they use word that they knew to describe it.
Yeah, chariots of fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Shields, drums. A lot of people said drums.
Angelic beings, and things like that.
Well, there was one actually that said earthenware was the name, and earthenware is literally a plate. You know, so when you think of saucer, their word was earthenware. So like flying earthenware, you're like, well, that's a flying saucer. And Jacques Vallée, are you familiar with Jacques Vallée?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's like just like the GOAT when it comes to looking at that ancient stuff, because he looks in weird, obscure references like fairies and goblins or whatever it is, right? And he'll find stories where there's missing time. Where people have been, taken, transported, and they're describing, like you said, a lot of the same things, but they just didn't have the vocabulary.
Exactly. It's fascinating to me, because a lot of it is subject to interpretation. So it's hard to differentiate what is it. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of religious texts, for example, it's subject to interpretation. And that's one of the reasons why there's, for example, in Christianity, there are the Catholic, the Protestant, the Adventist, because they have a different interpretation of what it is. And you can make a case for a lot of these ancient texts to be an account of something,
a close encounter.
Yeah, exactly. That could be an interpretation as well.
I think so, and I think that's a valid thing, and that we're discovering that more and more. You know, you have like Chariots of the Chariots of the Gods or whatever, and Diana Pasulka as well puts out a lot of work. She's a theologian or studies theology, and has found that like UFO is kind of like the new religion. Where we're following the same symptoms as a new religious coming. Like when Christianity was coming to be, it was very rebellious. The Romans were pushing against it. You would get you would get killed, for following the word of Christ, and until the revolution was so big that it became the thing, right? And that revolution, when that happened, there was a lot of sightings. There was a lot of angels coming down with messages, prophetic images, all of these things. And if you look at now, that's kind of happening as well. We have some characters out there that are also getting these images, or that are getting these sightings on command. And so, yeah, if you were to take these texts and bring them back 2,000 years, they would almost be identical.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it does leave you questioning, is UFO and ufology and is this the new religion? Are aliens the new angels? Not just are aliens the old angels? Are we going to worship aliens?
That's right, because before they used to believe in spirit of the forest, whatever it is. Now they became maybe religion. Now it was gods, and now not everyone, but a lot of people don't believe so much in religion anymore. So if they try to make sense of it, they will say it's maybe coming from another planet. We don't know what is the truth. It's crazy, but there's certainly something going on. There's certainly a phenomenon that it's hard to explain. Yeah.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't had like a sighting, I've had some multiple sightings in my life that I can't explain. I can't tell you for sure if they were UFOs or extraterrestrials, but I can tell you for me at the time, it felt like it was, so that feeling, I understand that feeling. And when you experience something, it kind of shakes your foundation. You kind of, that's the starting point where you're like, okay, hold on. Like, you didn't see what I saw. You didn't feel what I felt, and that's very personal.
We quit it. I'm like, from what I saw, I'm easy to be discredited because I'm not an astrophysicist. And a lot of people will say, yeah, you don't have the knowledge, the credibility, the competency to say that what you saw was a unidentified flying object because maybe it was Venus that, or I don't know,
swamp gas.
an asteroid, swamp gas, or an asteroid that bounced back, or a satellite that fall off. I mean, I've seen something that changed direction and it skipped. I mean, it's if it's Venus or something that could be explained, I will be like very, 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 very surprised. And the fact that all of us saw it in a different way was like, man, I don't know what to make of it.
Have you ever spoken to any of them afterwards about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time. Like we've talked about it, and a lot of them, like I'm sure they're like me, they're a little bit shy to talk about it, but I think it's important. I think it could attack our credibility a little bit, but it is important. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have seen stuff that are shy to talk about it because they're gonna be like seen as crazy.
Yeah.
Especially when you spend a lot of your life in a full contact sport. A lot of people will say, "Oh, he's brain damaged," but how do you explain that the five of us see something? I mean, collectively, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that that's the case so much anymore. I think maybe, again, like 10 years ago, prior to 2017, I think that might have been the case where it's like, oh, who are these guys? They're just crazy. They're conspiracy theorists. But I think now we're in a really new landscape where talking about it isn't so... Sure, there are some people, but I really do think that most of the people that matter in this subject and who are trying to push this forward, I mean, we're all in agreement here that something's going on. And what you described too, which is really interesting, the skipping part. I want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because this is also something mentioned by Bob Lazar.
Mm-hmm.
And you had an opportunity to meet Bob.
Yeah.
Did you bring this up to him?
I did. I met Bob, and for people who are not aware, Bob is he claims that he worked on a secret project in Area 51 in a place called S4. In a secret base, and he worked on trying to back engineer an object that is not from this world. That's his claim. And I've talked to him. I don't have any certainty, but I believe that he believes that he tells me the truth. That's what I believe. Same as Louis Elizondo. So I'm not perfect. I've been fooled before, but when I talk to them, I trust them. That what they're saying to me is what they believe to be true.
You got a good read.
Yes. Yeah. And Bob was explaining to me that, and he used to describe these flying discs a long time ago, like more than, like maybe almost 40 years. It's been like when he came out.
Yeah, 30,
30, yeah.
35,
almost 40 years. And the way he used to describe them, if I may, let's say it's a disc. He was describing them when they fly locally, they go like this, but when they have to return from where they're from, they point their belly, and the reason why they skip is because of the distortion in space and time. So that's from our perspective, we've seen the object skipping, but from perhaps their perspective inside, they don't skip. Maybe they go. So I don't know because I never experienced it being inside these things, but that's how we explain it. And I found it fascinating. Then when I talked to him, he explained that to me, and it made more sense, And I always been very curious about also consciousness. What is consciousness? Because we cannot even define what is consciousness. Religious people will say, "Oh, it's your soul." Scientists who are atheists will say, "Oh, it's the chemistry of your brain," And the argument that will be like, oh, you say you're a good or a bad person, but let's say you get in, you get in a car crash, boom, and you wake up from a coma, maybe you won't be the same person anymore. So that's their argument. They say, oh, that because your brain, the chemistry of your brain is affected. So we're, in a way, we're all, there's no soul. It's only matter. It's only material. And that's one of the questions that keeps me up at night. Are we, do we have sort of a soul, or are we only material?
Are we more than our physical body?
And one guy that made me change my mind on it is a friend of mine is Lex Friedman. He had a podcast, and he works in AI robotic. And one day I asked him, I said, because I used to believe about determinism. I thought that I used to think that there's no such thing as free will, that everything is, come from a cause, the causality.
Yep.
We have the illusion of free will, but everything is predetermined. And by definition, if there's a cause, there's no free will, because a free will is something you do spontaneously without cause. So I asked Lex, because if someone knows it's him, he works with robot, and I asked him, I say, hey, do you believe in free will or determinism? He said, and he said something to me that changed my way of thinking, because he's so smart and educated. When you talk to guys like him, or even Elon Musk, I had a chance to talk to him. I was like, these guys, they make me think for freaking months and years after I've talked to. I have to process what they tell me. And he says, George, we don't even know what is consciousness. Therefore, we cannot know if there's free will or determinism or both. We don't know. So even him, he doesn't,
That's the right answer.
That's the right answer. You know what I mean? When you don't, until you don't know, you have to remain like this. So I've always been fascinated about that. And that's why during COVID, after I retired, I decided to go on a journey. I decided to do ayahuasca. And I never talked about it because as an athlete, I was always anti-drugs, because for me, in martial arts, one of the value is respect. And if you're respectful, you're going to fight fair. You're not going to use performance-enhancing drugs. So I never wanted to use drug. I waited after I retired to do that experience, but I always wanted to do it because I'm very curious about consciousness. We all have dreams sometimes that we can remember, but what does it mean? Because we were sleeping and we have dreams that seem so real. So what it is? Like, is it the only imagination, material from our brain, the circuitry, or there's really something? So I decided to do an adventure, ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a psychedelic, very strong psychedelic.
Extremely strong, yeah.
And I never take drug. I never snore cocaine or did anything else. I've tried marijuana before, but it's not really my thing. It makes me paranoid. I've drank, but I never did that. So I start from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. And I got in touch with this guy because for a reason I'm not allowed to say who it is and where it is. But so one night I decided to do that. And because of my name, I don't want to be, when I did it, I was kind of scared. I decided to bring a friend of mine who was my bodyguard. His name is Eddie. He's a friend of mine. And I decided to bring him with me alone, just in case something happened. Because people will laugh at it, but I'm afraid. I never done drug before. So he said, I told him, if something happened, bring me to the hospital right away.
Best thing to do, probably.
Yeah. So I was alone when I did it. I was with him and the shaman and one of his apprentice, and I had a friend with me that I've done ayahuasca before that did it with me. That's it. Because normally when you do that, you have a room with maybe 6, 8 people, but I didn't want to do, because I wanted to be private.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I took, it's a cup, and it's made of I think it's made of a leaf, and it's a mixture of natural ingredient that come from the Amazon, and it had been boiled. So you take it, and what I did is I took it and I lay down on a mat, and I'm in the basement of a house, and I didn't do it in South America. I did it here. So when it started, after a few minutes, I start leaving my body. I start levitating and going towards the ceiling. And when that happened, I felt like I sort of lost control. So I kind of resisted, and I came back into myself. And for the next maybe 20, 30 minutes, nothing happened. And now I start thinking, I was like, shit, I might have ruined my entire adventure. And it made me sad a little bit. Then the shaman, he came to see me. He's like, are you okay, George? I'm like, I explained to him, like, yeah, I resisted. I left my body, but I kind of resisted because I didn't like the sensation of losing control. And he looked at me, he's like, George, you have to let yourself go. And for me, it's hard. It's something I never done. You know, I always like to be in control because, you know, my background in mixed martial art, you have to be in control and control all the data in order to maximize your chance of winning, you know, in a fight. But now I have to let go, to rely on something that I never done, and let it go. So he says to me, he's like, let it go. I'm like, okay. It's like, can I take some more? He's like, you can take more as long as you feel good and I see that you're good. I was like, all right. So I take another cup, and I lay down again. And then I left I'm not leaving my body going up like this. I'm leaving it going up like this, looking down.
You're seeing yourself?
Yeah. I'm seeing myself, but I'm seeing myself, and I'm still aware that I'm in the bed. It's like I'm in two places in the same time, and I'm not alone. There's something that sort of lift me up. And I'm going to draw it to you so you can. So this thing that I see appears to me under this shape. It's called a keyhole shape, they call it.
Whoa.
No eyes, no mouth, no, like this shape.
What color? Was it black? Was it like see-through?
It was no color. Like, it was just translucent. Like it's not like I could see it with my eyes. I was seeing it inside my head.
Right, you were perceiving it. Yeah.
And it was communicating with me. Not like I'm talking to, hi, how are you? Like in my head. Like a airdrop, you know, like air zook and zook. And everything he was thinking, I was receiving, and everything he was thinking, I was receiving. So it was like a connection, you know. And as I'm going up, I see myself. I even see my friend. He was texting someone. And I told him, I'm like, I know you were, after the adventure, I told him, I said, you were texting this person. And he said, how did you know? I said, I went over your shoulder, man. I saw it. And I'm lifting. And I go through the ceiling. I see the house. And I'm like, and to the opposite of what happened a few minutes before, when the first time when I didn't want to lose control, now I feel very confident because this thing is carrying me, and I feel like the best feeling in the world. Like safe, love, successful, confident. Like I feel like I'm in the up top emotionally. Like I feel like I'm like the best feeling in the world. Not physically like high, but mentally, like, man, feel like in perfect harmony. And as I'm going up, I'm like, who are you? What, you know, who are you? And it says, I'm you and everybody in the same time. I'm the air you breathe and the water you drink. So it's and it didn't say it. It through my mind. And as I'm going up, I see the town where I am. I see the planet. Then it made me understand that it says to me like, I know why you're here. You're curious to know about what is consciousness, and I'm gonna show it to you. I'm gonna show you what is consciousness. And then I see the map, the planet, the solar system. It's like I'm going out, like I zoom out, from where I was, and I see the entire thing, and I see the galaxies, the universe, the different dimension. To the point that at one point I'm like, I couldn't explain.
It's too much.
Okay, it's too much. I can't take it anymore. It's like please, I don't want to know more. I just can't take it. And it was very weird. I'm the one who sort of tell him, is like, and the whole time this thing is with me, sort of guiding me. And I'm like, because I'm in a great I'm in a feeling of harmony, and I'm telling it. I'm like, is it only for this adventure? Will you leave me after this? Or he's like, no, I'm gonna be always with you. And when things doesn't go well, close your eyes and remember me. Always gonna be there, even after this adventure ends. I'm always there with you. And I'm like, okay. And then it sort of says to me, it's like, now that you found, what you came for, I would like to share something with you. There is a lot of time that you do things that you don't realize that you hurt people. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, I'm gonna show you things, but after you've seen it, it's up to you to make the effort to change, because I cannot make the effort for you. You have to make the effort if you want to change and become better. I'm like, okay. And then it started going into some of my past,
Your memories,
on my memory, but not like memory, like I was reliving certain memory that I pushed so deep inside of me, like I didn't want to remember, and stuff from my childhood, so stuff that are so personal that even I cannot talk about, but stuff also that stuff that I've done, certain things that I've done to people, like stuff that have been done to me, but also stuff that I've said, have done, that I didn't realize at the time how much I hurt certain people. And I didn't mean to hurt them, but this thing made me sort of go through the perspective of the person that I was hurting.
Wow.
And live the emotion of that person when I did that. And I live it, and now I understand. And I'm like, shit, I really hurt that person, when I did this. And like a mirror, like if I would have done it to myself.
Wow.
And I felt the emotion running through. And now I realize, I'm like, shit. I'm like, I feel bad. I've done this, and I didn't even realize that I hurt that person. And you're so caught up with what you do, you only focus on, for me, when I was young, the most important thing was, to be the strongest man in the world. And all my focus was on that. Everything I did was about to be champion, and that's what it was. The other thing around, I was seeing it not only as a distraction, because I had great times. A lot of the people I've met, I really genuinely love those certain people, and I love them. But because my focus was not on prioritizing them and more prioritizing my goal, I hurt them in the process, and I did not realize that. And this adventure made me realize that. And man, it was crazy. Like, and a lot of things, that's just one example, but a lot of things like this, I relive through my mind. It made me realize that sometimes I've said stuff in other situations to other people, and I hurt them. It made me very sensitive about stuff that I've done. And I was like, shit, I really did that. And I didn't realize at the time how much I hurt certain people. And now I do. And even after my adventure was done, I call certain people, And I apologized to them. I say, hey, sorry, I know I did this, I did that. Hey, man, I did it. Like certain people that I noticed that I hurt. And I thought they would have find it weird that I called them. But a lot of them, they were like, they're like, oh, thank you very much. I mean, you come a long way, and I appreciate you realize, and it means a lot. And it sort of made peace. I made peace with it, and it felt great. And that was one part of the adventure. And at the end, because it lasts about 4 hours, it's a strong drug. They call it medicine, but it's really a drug.
Yeah.
And towards the end, this thing again, I always point it out because I want people to see. It says to me, it's like, now, George, I know you hold a lot of grudge, a lot of anger. You grew up with a lot of anger, and you didn't let it out. It served you for what you did for your fighting, but now you have to learn how to let it go. And when I did this adventure, I was always contemplating an opportunity maybe to make a comeback, or because I still had that thing inside of me. So it says to me, is like, now you're gonna have to do like a detox, and it will manifest physically. And I'm like, okay, like you have to release all the negative emotion, and it will manifest physically. Are you ready? I'm like, yes, I'm ready. And it says, like, if you need my help, I will always be there. So I said, okay, and I'm ready. And then I went to the bathroom. And that day, before you do ayahuasca, they advise you to not eat.
Yeah.
To not eat anything. If you eat very light. And I didn't eat that day. I fasted. So I go in the bathroom because I start feeling a little bit sort of sick. And I have a bucket. And I told you early on in my adventure, I had the hot top in terms of emotion. I felt very good. But now, my friend, I dive down deep to the point that I have nothing to live for. Like, and I'm a very happy person in life. But now, man, like nothing to live for. Like basically I want to die. And I start having very negative thought, and it manifests physically. It comes out, I'm on the bathroom in the liquid. It comes out crying, like depressed, like to the point like it's insane, and throwing up. So, and I'm sweating like I'm in a sauna, like
Purge,
like down, cry,
everything,
and sweat, like everything comes out. And to the point that I can no longer take it. And now I'm thinking about this thing. I'm like, please, I can't take it. And it comes back to me, lift me up, like a little bit like I'm drowning and I cannot breathe. And they lift me up, like, take a few inhale. Okay. Are you ready to dive back into it, George? You have to let it go. Like you have to clean it up. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Okay, go back in it. And then I cry. And then when I can no longer take it up, it comes back. It lifts me back up. Okay. Take a break, but we have to go back. It's almost done. Okay, I'm doing it again. Okay, go. Like a few times. It lasted for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And even my friend who was outside, he knocked in the bathroom. And the whole time I was conscious that I was in two places in the same time. I was on the toilet, but I was also somewhere else, like doing like a purge. And he knocked at the bathroom. He said, hey, George, you okay? He's like, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Thank you. Things go well. I just need to let it go. He's like, okay, if something happened, let me know. We break the door and we come get you. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. So I was able to talk and during that adventure to the point that when it was done, I took a shower. I changed my clothes. Man, I felt so light. It was just like a relief. It felt so good, physically and mentally. And I have no evidence to prove you that, yes, I really did lift my body. I went somewhere outside that, the experience that I live in my mind. Maybe I really did it, or maybe I was so freaking high that I think that I did it. I think I went to people's head and I had like a mirror emotion experience. I made it all up because I thought, I can't tell you. But I'm after living the adventure that I lived, I'm under the impression that a strong impression that there is something to consciousness that is not only measured by materialism. Now, I used to be skeptic, like how do you say
Agnostic, yeah.
agnostic, but now I lean more towards
Like
a believer.
something more. Yeah.
Now I'm very convinced that there is something. And a lot of my friends that are atheists, that I told them that, they say, oh, you were just so fucking high, you know, like, yeah, maybe I was, but it shake me to my core so much that I think there is something, you know. And and I think it's a beautiful experience. I don't encourage people to take it because it's a drug, and I did it once, and I don't have the desire to do it again because I love my brain and I don't want to damage it. But I'm happy I done it. I'm very happy I've done it because it's an experience that changes my life.
Wow, George. Thank you for sharing that.
No, it's something that I never talk publicly about it, but it's something that really changes me, and I'm very happy I've done it. It's crazy. It is crazy. And if some people sometimes they wonder should I do it or not, you have to listen to yourself. Don't force yourself. If you force yourself, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
You need to do it because if you're ready to do it, you have to let it go, and you have to treat that with respect. You know, I know it was used heavily by ancient culture in a way to perhaps communicating with something or to get deep inside your own consciousness. But it's really something that you need to treat with respect. And it's not a recreational drug. It is absolutely not. And it's an experience I've done, and I'm very happy I've done it. And yeah, it changes me.
That is really, really profound. That sounds like, you know, a lot of people. We talked a little bit before this podcast about, you know, my experience when I did DMT, and I had a lot of people say, you know, you should, after my out of body experiences, you know, I had like half a dozen of these where I'd leave my body through meditation. And, you know, a lot of people were like, you should do ayahuasca or you should do DMT. And so I did DMT, albeit my experience was nowhere near as like profound as yours. There was the same element of phasing out of your body and kind of like lifting out. And I felt a very familiar sense to that. And so for me, it was very validating because like you, through my experiences, I was changed. I grew up Catholic. I became atheist, moved towards agnosticism because I started being like, I don't care. I don't know, maybe there isn't, I don't know. And then through these experiences of seeing my own self, I'm convinced that I'm more than my physical body.
Yeah.
And like you said, like there's no hard evidence anywhere, but the hardest evidence I don't need. I just, there's a knowing now that I can't ignore.
There's one thing that is very important to mention, and it's because sometimes, like you read René Descartes, he says, like, let's say you put a straw in a glass of water, you see the straw bending. So your senses can fool you. If they can fool you once, they can fool you twice or forever. So because of that, for me, it was very important that I was like, how do I know this experience is real after when I'm done? So I asked this thing. I asked it. I say, how would I know? And it says to me, I will give you a gift that only you will know. And I didn't realize what it was, the gift. But now I know. I used to be scared of height, like crazy scared of height. I've done stuff in my life that require me to step over my fear, to challenge my fear, like skydiving, or, you know, even when I was in Singapore, I did some climbing under a bridge. I was terrified. I've always been terrified of height. I know when I changed when the leaf in your, when in spring when you have to go on top of your house for
the gutters.
the gutters to clean the leaf. I'm terrified of doing it. I freaking hate it. I'm like, I feel the feeling like I'm about to fall. Like even when I go up in a building, I look down, I feel like it shake me to my core. But now I know, since my experience, I don't have that feeling anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah, I swear it's true.
So that's like a personal.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like a personal confirmation that what I live is real. So there's an argument to counter that. They would say, "Oh, the drug you took maybe break your brain and break that part of your brain that gives you the fear. Maybe it's the drug that done it. Maybe, or maybe it's really this thing that gave me it. I don't know, but I know for a fact that now when I go on, for example, in the height, I'm aware of the danger, but I'm not paralyzed and stiff.
Yeah,
I'm not like I used to be before.
Right.
I'm more comfortable, but I'm aware it's dangerous. But I'm not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We say in French, je suis figé, figé. You know, like I'm
frozen. Yeah.
Frozen. Yeah. And this is something that sort of, for me, confirm.
That was like a little wink.
Yes, because for me it's important that I have a confirmation that it's deeper. Not only my senses, I've seen something, I hear something, because this could fool you sometime, you know?
And it's almost like it knew that. I was like, I'm gonna give you something because I know
it
you're
says
still
it to
skeptical.
me. Because I asked the question, I said, how would I know if it's real? And it sort of made me understand, like, that's, you will have a gift. And I didn't realize what was the gift, and now I know that's the gift.
That's interesting.
Or maybe I'm completely insane. I made it all up in my mind. Who knows?
Well, here's,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. You know, that's the counter argument. But I also counter argue that with, you know, why do we associate the physical with the real? Right? What if this isn't real? And what if everything else is? Because that seems to be the trend. It seems to be like, if we're looking at interdimensional, you know, beings, or even the non-existence of space-time, like the way these things operate is like behaves differently. When we sleep, time behaves differently. When our brain shuts down, it's like, it seems like this astral or this whatever this space is might be the real. And like, you know, much like the simulation theory, and I don't like that word because it makes us feel like a video game, which I don't think that's at all it. But this is some type of lower density 3D avatar that we're sort of learning lessons through. So the way that I always see this is that's the reality. Okay, this other place is the reality. And there you have instant manifestation. You can manifest anything. You can go anywhere. Anything just happens instantly. It's so easy. But when you do that, you don't learn anything because everything's too easy. You have it all. Yeah. So we're put here into these, you know, this 3D reality, and everything's hard and slow. And we move like through molasses here. And if we want to manifest something, it takes years or months, and we have to think of it, and we have to really and move things to make it happen. So it's like a slow motion version of what's really going on. But this is the only way that we can learn hardship, and we can learn lessons that we take back to the reality, right? So when people say, you know, is it real? Is it not real? I think what we're asking, like, is it physical or non-physical? And I don't think non-physical means it's not real. I think there are different reals. Yeah.
What I get from my ayahuasca adventure also is the fact that I'm under the impression, and that's only me, that consciousness is something that linked everything together. That we're all ones in the same time, that we're all different.
Yeah.
You know, in a materialistic world, we'll say, like, let's say I die. You bury me naked underneath the soil. I will stop existing as an entity walking around, but I will not end. I will be transformed. The worms will eat me. Perhaps the grass on top of me, the herbs will grow faster because the organic material. So I will move from that state of walking around to another state of different things. And I'm under the impression that that's what consciousness is about. And it gave me also the impression that, you know, when someone die, we're all very sad, you know, and it's normal, we're sad. but it gives me the impression that there's something that, that person died that became part of something else that one day will join it as well to be part of that thing, and we're all sort of together. I don't know how to explain.
No, I think
it's a freaking profound experience, and they say, we saw certain clip online, like the Rick James, he says, hey, cocaine is a hell of a drug, but like ayahuasca is a hell of a drug too. So I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have. They should definitely make that a meme instead.
They're gonna make some meme now.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca is a hell of a drug.
So Joe Rogan saying it.
With Rick James. Yeah.
Yeah. That seems to be on par with a lot of beliefs, and that's the thing. It's like this isn't the one thing that I keep understanding is that none of this is new, right? And that's the feeling that I got when I was sort of leaving my body as well. I started vibrating before it happened, right? I started getting, and I thought I documented this. I thought there was a truck on the property, and I was like, how rude that like there's this giant truck on the property when we're trying to meditate. Turns out, no, that was me. There was a vibration in me, and it wasn't physical, but it felt physical. And when that was happening, like it was just so strange. And the feeling that I got, the overwhelming, like the only way that I can explain it is this is ancient. That's it. Whatever's happening to me right now, I felt connected me to thousands of years of humans. That this specific moment right now, links me to them. Not me researching something, not something I'm eating, not the air, not nothing. This feeling, this is a very human feeling.
Yeah.
And this is something that links me to all of that. Like we all have differences over time and knowledge and intelligence, experience, but this we have in common. And that was a really powerful sensation to feel that, because it felt true. It felt like, hey, this is true. This is real,
And I even told you before the interview, before the podcast, that I would be very interested to go back into that state, but I'm no longer interested to do it using drugs to get there. I feel it's sort of a shortcut.
Yep.
And sometimes with shortcut, I feel sometimes it's like giving a gun to a child, or he doesn't have the wisdom to use it. And maybe I did ayahuasca, but I didn't have the wisdom. I didn't work together. I just took something and boom, I get there. I cheated. You know what I mean? And I feel I did it once. It was okay. But I'm very interested if there's a way, because I heard monks get there because your brain produced DMT. If there's a way to get there naturally, I would really love to learn that.
Yeah.
And I know you're trying to, you're going down that rabbit hole, and I'm really interested to learn these. When I was young, when I was a kid, I used to have experience called sleep paralysis, and that's how they call it. I don't know what it is. And that's one of the reasons why I first started getting interested by UFO. Even before I had the encounter with my 4 friend that I've seen something in the sky. It started way earlier. When I was a kid, I used to sit, I used to be in bed at night, and I used to have nightmares of things that came and get me, and I used to tell my parent, I'm like, man, I was scared. And for a long time, I was terrified. I thought like something came to get me. And I met, when I met Joe Rogan, and he talked to me about a phenomenon called sleep paralysis. He says like, there's a phenomenon that you're in bed and you cannot move, and your brain produces the DMT, and it starts hallucinating things, and that could be it. But man, it really traumatized me when I was young, to the point that even now I'm an adult sometime, and let's say I'm in bed and I'm alone, and I start thinking about it. It makes me remember the fear, and it scared me. Even when I'm a grown man and I can't defend myself, it traumatized me to that point.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons now I would be very interesting to learn of how I could perhaps get back into that mental state if there's ways to do it naturally. I used to be very skeptic. I used to learn to hear all those stories. Oh yeah, this, that, they go. I'm like, yeah, right. But now that I did ayahuasca, I know it's possible to do it on drugs.
Yeah.
I would love to know how to do it naturally, just to perhaps increase my knowledge and maybe help me be a better person, you know?
Yeah. And that's probably the best intention to go into it with. And that's probably the strongest intention as well. Because when you rule out, this is just something in my experience as well, and this has been echoed by a lot of people who study this, but when you rule out the ego part of it, that's when things happen, right? If it's not for monetary gain or it's not for any other purpose, but like once the ego is out of the equation, that's when you're more receptive. That's when the intention's sort of pure and it kind of picks up on that, the phenomenon.
It's an very interesting thing that you just mentioned, ego. And that's one of the things I had a hard time to let it go in the fighting world.
Yeah,
it's a very egotistic industry.
Yeah.
Everything is about being the alpha, not being scared, and
very physical, lower density. Like everything is
100%. It's a lot of bullying and mental warfare, and you never want to admit that you're scared, even though deep down inside you are,
right?
Because it shows signs of weakness, but it's not. In a way, admitting that you're scared, it showcases that you're strong because you're allowed to talk about your fear. And if I'm an open book and I talk about my fear, I'm not afraid of you. You know what I mean? Like, because I've shown my most vulnerable part, because I'm confident that I'm better than you.
True strength.
Yes. So yeah, but the ego, letting go of your ego, that's the ego. In the same time, it's your pride, and it is what makes you stand up and being strong towards adversity. But in the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because if you let it go, it can make you a better person. It'd be more open to people, and you know.
Yeah. And that's something you've actually talked about. Like I remember hearing that too. Like admitting you're nervous, or admitting that like, yeah, no, I am like going into this fight. You're not like just everyone else where they were like, this is it. I'm gonna, there was a certain, but that helped you. That like made you a more intelligent fighter as well.
You know what happened, Chris? Early on in my career, I mean, the way I describe it is we're not all born with the same set of card. You know, we all have different skills. You know, if I would have been born with an handicap, I would never be able to be champion. I'm a very athletic person. I always been good in sports, and I developed a passion with martial art early on. Watching movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme and all these guys, Chuck Norris, they really inspire me. Steven Seagal, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. And I was bullied at school. So I first started karate. I started with Kyokushin karate as a self-defense, to defend myself in the schoolyard. And then it transformed into a passion, because things back then things were not going well at home. My dad at that time was drinking, and things were not going well at school because I was getting bullied. Instead of focusing on what the teacher was saying, I had to try to think about how I'm going to reach out my locker, pick up my book, and get to the bus before the guys get to me and beat me up. And that was something that was happening to me on a weekly basis. So I was not happy. I was not good anywhere. I felt bad everywhere. The only place I felt good, it was the dojo, because I was doing well in karate. I was starting to collect medal, and that was the only place where I feel like, hey man, I'm good here. I'm doing something well. And then later on, my dad, he did something that really inspired me and brought back my family together when he stopped drinking, and it really inspired me. And it changes my life, because I saw how hard it was to fight the thirst. And not only that he stopped drinking, he started to mentor younger people that try to stop drinking. I remember at night, sometimes the phone was ringing at 11 at night, and it was my dad picking up the phone. It was maybe a younger guy. It was like, hey man, I'm thirsty. And then My dad was like, I'm coming to get you. Don't, and he left. So it really inspired me, because I saw how hard it was. And now I realized it only later when I was an adult, not really at the time. It was like sort of a delay, and it really inspired me. But I remember even early on in my career, we talk about ego and pride. When I was looking around, I felt I never fit where I was. I loved the purity, I wanted to be champion. I did it for the right reason. I didn't want to do it because I wanted to be popular with the money, because they didn't have any money and popularity back then. I just wanted to be champion. I wanted to be the best. I did it for the pure reason. But when I was looking around and I was looking at my training partner in my environment, I didn't fit in, because all the guys I was with, they were like, yeah, I can't wait for Saturday night. I'm like, man, I'm scared. I'm not happy to be here. I'm happy to be in the gym to train and to have that lifestyle. And I know if I want to continue to have that lifestyle, the sacrifice is that I need to fight Saturday night and win the fight in order to do it. But I don't enjoy this process. I'm not happy to do it. I'm happy to have that lifestyle for free, but I'm not happy to go fight. I never liked to fight. So I decided to seek the help of sport psychologists, because, man, I felt I didn't fit in. And some sport psychologists tried to brainwash me. They were like, George, stop saying you're afraid. You're not afraid. You're excited. And then one of them, my English used to be it's still bad, but used to be way worse before. And I was like, is it a language barrier? Excited? I don't think I'm excited. I would be excited in a different situation, but I'm not excited to know that I'm going to fight Saturday night, not knowing if I will be badly injured or humiliated. But I'm afraid. And then I realized that, man, I need to make peace with it. And there is no shame to admit that you're afraid, because there's no courage without fear. And when I made peace with that, it changes everything in my life, because I made peace. And I said it to even in my opponents, like, yeah, I'm scared of you, but no matter what, I'm going to freaking walk the walk on Saturday night, and there's nothing you can do. And the way you counter fear, whether you're a fighter, an entrepreneur, or whatever, it's with the preparation. The more well you prepare, the more you will build up your confidence. Mm-hmm. And if you have confidence, remember, confidence is not the absence of fear. It's knowing that you have what you need in order to succeed. A good analogy is, if I talk to young student at school, I'm telling them, if you have an exam a Friday and you study very hard, yes, you will still be afraid Friday, the day of the exam, but you have the right to be confident, to walk in there with confidence, even though you're afraid. But if you have not studied, you will be afraid, but you don't have the right to be confident, because you didn't do the work. You didn't put in the work. And confidence, whether you're a fighter, an entrepreneur, whatever you do, whether even in any situation, even if you go ask a girl on a date, confidence, whatever you do, it's the most important thing. One of the most important things. You need the skills, the preparation, and the confidence. Because if you don't have confidence, it's a little bit like, it's a good analogy that my sensei was saying to me, is that if you don't have confidence, it's like someone who has a lot of money in his bank account, but no way of accessing it.
Right.
You can never reach your full potential. Mm-hmm. And the way you build confidence is through preparation. And when I made peace with it, I knew I was afraid. I made peace with it. I remember when I was young, I thought the fear will go away over time, that I will get used to it. I will no longer be afraid, but that's not true. It's the opposite. It gets worse, because every fight is bigger than the last one. Right. And it gets worse. But because I made peace with it, I was like, man, I know this is normal. I need to be afraid, because I know when I'm afraid, it heightened my reaction time, my reset time. It makes me better. So I embrace fear. I know it's a normal thing. And if my opponent is like, you're afraid of me? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm afraid of you. But I'm going to fucking do it regardless. And I think, from my perspective, is way scarier than saying, "No, I'm not afraid." Because like 99% of the people in my field of work, like, "No, I'm not afraid. I'm gonna kick his ass." Like, bullshit, man. You're scared, or either you're scared, or you're a psychopath. You're a liar. That's the three possibility. You're lying, or you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're dumb as hell, because if you're not afraid, that means you don't know the consequences of what can happen.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. Yeah. Wow, man.
Because you never control the entire data. When you go into a fight, or you have to focus on things that you have the power to control. You don't want to focus, and that's the hardest thing to do, because there's so many distractions. You don't want to focus on things you don't control. For example, what the people gonna say. Am I gonna win or lose? What my opponent's gonna do? It needs to be wiped out of your mind. Only focusing on things that you do control, things that I do. Me, as an entity, I don't exist. Am I going to be sick the morning of the fight? Am I sleeping well or not? I don't care. It's out of my mind. The only thing that matters is the objective. And the objective is the only thing that matters, because that's what's going to lead you to the path of victory. And this needs to be done at all costs. That's the spirit, you know? You need to go in. It's hard to think about it, but that's the way it is. Like a soldier. It's objective, no subjective.
But that's such a big contrast between being there, preparing yourself physically, mentally for a physical and mental bout. And on top of that, all the other obstacles that are being thrown your way, not only like health-wise, but also like, you know, emotionally or personally, the things that you're dealing with, or like the media and all this stuff, right? It's a big battle. Going from that to
yes,
what happened after this, you know, ayahuasca trip, which is completely almost like
180 degree.
Yeah, the opposite.
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, you've done that. Now forget all that. And you're like, how do I forget all that? That's, you know, that's your identity, that's everything. And you had to come to terms with that too. So that must have been just like, I mean, I can even hear you telling a story, and I know that it's changed you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were, let's put this scenario. If you were to somehow have a time machine, right?
Yeah.
And go back into the ring, but after having this experience, do you think that would make you a better or worse fighter?
It's a good question. I think it would make me worse. I think there's a chronological way to do it. I think you don't want to do this before you finish your career.
Right.
And what I'm saying is only what from my field of my expertise, my experience. But I know that there's some other professional combat athlete. For example, Deontay Wilder mentioned, I believe, that he did ayahuasca, and he believed that's why his career went down.
Oh, wow.
He said it publicly.
Wow. And
I can understand why. Because that ego thing that we talk about as a fighter is the most important thing. That's your spine. That's what holds you up against all odds, against all the adversity. It's your ego, your pride. But in society, it could be an obstacle. Because, you know, sometimes an ego, you have to let your ego aside. It makes you putting it down, it makes you a better person, I believe. And even the people that know me personally says that when I did ayahuasca, it really changes me. It made me more empathetic, more in touch with the other people. I'm by no means perfect. I have a lot of issues, and I need to work on myself a lot, you know, but I'm a little bit better than I used to be.
Yeah, and I can see that as being a problem too, going into the ring with empathy.
You don't.
Feeling bad for hurting your opponent is not something you want to think about.
You want to be like I mean, I don't like that
like
to
a
say
robot,
it. Yeah, like an alpha bull, you know, like, bro, you're here to destroy and kill everyone.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it is. That's how you need to be. But you can't stay like that all your life. And I believe one of the reasons why a lot of athletes in combat sport have a hard time letting it go. And you see a lot of athletes sometimes they should have retired maybe a decade ago, but they're still out there
Right.
fighting. I mean, it's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad. You see that happening all the time. And they hurt themselves.
CTE.
Oh, CTE physically. They hurt also themselves business-wise.
Yeah.
Because when you finish on top,
Mm-hmm.
for example, for me, like, the best reason why I stopped is because is my health. I wanted to finish healthy,
Mm-hmm.
to have a future, to be healthy for the rest of my life. But also the second reason is business-wise. When you finish on top, I compare, for example, entertainers or athletes like stock in the market. If you finish on top, your stock worth a lot of money. So there's a lot of opportunity when you retire and you turn around. A lot of business opportunity opens to you. Those opportunity will not be there if you retire on a four losing streak, because your stock will go down. And it's something to think about. So a lot of people, they told me, yeah, you must have, George, you should have keep on fighting. You left a lot of money on the table. Maybe I left some money on the table, but I think I catch it up on the long run.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I didn't damage my health, because it's not only the fight. Think about it. When you get ready for a fight, you have to go into a training camp, get hit, and all that. It's even worse than the fight itself and all the stresses that you have. And for me, the stress was the most damageable thing, the stress. I always been very open about it. Like, I was stressed, I was scared, and it took a lot out of me, a lot more than the physical damage. Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I developed a condition called ulcer colitis. I believe big part because of that stress. And when, in my last fight with Michael Bisping, I fought in the Madison Square Garden. Prior to that fight, a few weeks, I had severe cramps. And when I went to bathroom, it was blood. And I didn't know what it was. I was like, man, is it a cancer or anything? And I told myself, for whatever it is, I'm going to deal with it after the fight in a few weeks. So after the fight, I did what they call a colonoscopy.
Yep.
They put something inside of you. They give you some medication to empty yourself, and it's something that you don't want to do before the fight. Yeah. But they put a camera and they went to see inside, and I got diagnosed with ulcer colitis.
Ulcerative colitis, yeah.
So I was on medication. But I'm not a big fan of medication. I mean, I always look for alternative ways of how I can get better. And I met a doctor in Toronto that changed my life. His name is Jason Fung. You can research it. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. He wrote many books about fasting. And he got me into a fasting program. And believe it or not, a few months after, all my symptoms disappeared and I no longer use medication.
Do you think that also had something to do with the fact that you weren't fighting anymore?
It could be.
Because the stress, yeah. But both,
It could be, but I had other stresses in my life. It could be that, but I believe that the fasting really helped me.
Yep. I believe in fasting too, by the way.
Because it gives time to your system to rejuvenate. It's like if you eat all the time, and when I was fighting Michael Bisping, I was on a diet that I was forcing myself to eat because I was trying to put on weight, which was, by the way, a big mistake of my part. I should have just stayed the same weight that I am. But I was trying to put on weight because I was fighting in a weight class heavier than I normally compete at. So I was trying to get bigger. But it was, it didn't do me any good because I got sick and everything. But the fact that I put a lot of stress, like mental stress and physical stress, I think that's what triggered that issue. And after, when I went to fasting, different fasting protocols, it helped me get rid of all my symptoms.
Yeah. I mean, people need to be aware of the fact that diet can fix 90% of the health issues that are out there right now. Yeah. Maybe even more.
I made some research and I found out that, the reason why we eat 3 times a day, and sometimes even some people eat more than that, like 5 times a day, it's since the Industrial Revolution. Before that, this did not exist. Since the Industrial Revolution, because of the work, the laws They had to make
Break.
time for eating
Mm.
for the employees. So if you go back, this thing did not really existed. It was since the Industrial Revolution. So it's really recent in our evolution that we are conditioned to eat at that time. Think about it. Just logically think about it. Like our hunter-gatherer ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
They did not wake up in the morning and have breakfast, most of the time, because you need to work to get your breakfast. You need to hunt. You need,
Yep.
you don't get your breakfast for free.
In a fridge.
Yeah, so exactly. So the fact that you wait in the morning, and that's what I do now. I don't get breakfast in the morning. I eat my eggs and, my coffee a little bit later during the day and after my first training. And I just wish, Chris, I would have known that before. It would perhaps not have caused all the harms that I did to my body.
Yeah. But then again, you being on that path is what led you to this. So you might not have,
It's true.
It's like a feedback loop. You have to go through the hardships to learn all this stuff. But it's very, very interesting. Myself, so I eat mainly a paleo diet. I'm borderline in ketosis most of the time because of like this paleo diet. I don't eat sugar, no dairy, no pasta. It's strict like
no processed food.
No processed food, none.
Interesting.
Yeah, all just meat, leafy greens, and root veggies.
And do you think that helps you to get into that mental meditating state? Because I've heard that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert on that. Like apparently you have to be centered. Like you cannot be hungry or sad or you know what I mean, like horny, or you have to be right.
Yep, it does help. It does help, and there's been a lot of studies actually. There's a guy Graham Nichols. He did a lot of research on this too. How his research was not eating meat, how it induces more psi ability. So more sort of the psychic sort of ability during these out-of-body experiences and all that stuff, that there's been a correlation between like vegetarians and vegans having actually more experiences and more accuracy during these testings. I tend to think that it probably isn't the lack of meat.
Yeah.
My, I guess, hypothesis is it's the lack of processed food.
Chemicals.
Correct.
Because there's a lot of chemicals in veggies as well.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to do a diet without processed nowadays because processed is just so much cheaper, and people groceries are getting more expensive, and so it's not easy for everyone to have like a good diet. It's very strange, but like you look at like, okay, the poorest parts in the world, yes, people are very skinny because they're malnourished and they're not eating. And then you look at like just above that, people have a little money, are completely overweight. And then and you have a lot of money, you're back in shape again. And so it's like, like we really do have a system where we're offering a lot of really bad food at low cost, and that's been part of the problem. But to your point, there is a certain headspace that you have to be in, but that headspace I don't think can come at the beginning. I think it takes practice like everything else. Like I don't think you can go into meditating your first time ever, be centered and have like an amazing experience. I think it's just something you have to keep doing because it's different for everyone. The feeling, the meditation itself, calming your mind is it depends where you're at and what you've eaten really, and all of this. So it's a journey that over time you start to discover what's good for you and how you can actually see very clearly what's going on in your psyche when you get to that point. So if I'm in a meditation and something keeps popping up, at the beginning, I'd be like, oh, try to shut that down. I have to shut this down. I have to control, and I have to like shut myself up. And after a while, you're just like, okay, come on in. And you look at it and you observe it. And then when you're done with it, you're like, you good now? Okay, you can leave. And this becomes like through practice, you're able to do this much easier, and it becomes like fun. It becomes fun to embrace and sit with your problems and sit with those stresses or those, like you said, like if you're horny or if you're angry, and they even say that during the Monroe, the Gateway experience, they even before that, they briefed me and they're like, you might get horny during these things. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, it's energy. It's one of the most primal forms of energy. It's creation energy, right? And so how at first you're like, oh, I'm getting a random boner during my meditation.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell's going on, right? And then after a while, you're like, oh, I can take that energy and sort of spread it through my body. I can control it. So again, it's not about shutting down all of these things, but it's about rechanneling that energy and much like martial arts.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming at you, it's using their own energy against them rather than forcing against that energy, which could be damaging for you both.
Yeah.
It's much easier to take that and roll with it.
How do you, why, I mean, I have to be the devil advocate now.
Mm-hmm.
Why nobody has ever come publicly in a way to prove that? Like, you know what I mean? Like that
The out of body experience and stuff.
yeah, not out of body, but like the psionic power, because it's not proven. Like a remote viewing sort of thing. Like why, if it's true, there is no strong evidence of, let's say, like, okay, like someone can do it, goes public, it's like, okay, I bring me anybody that I will be in the room next to that person and no, I will draw what they draw on the paper or whatever it is. Like, why you think? I mean, because I'm still skeptic.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, when you do these experiments, apparently from the lore, you have to take off your intellect and be more into intuition. But how do you make the difference between intuition and deduction?
Yeah.
Because when I'm fighting, I don't know how to explain it. If someone is about to throw a punch, I will see it coming. Is it intuition or is it deduction? Because I've seen that pattern so many times, so I can identify it before it comes. Or is it both?
It's a great question. And
what makes a good athlete an athlete? Is it his intuition? Because there's guys like, for example, John Jones.
Yeah.
Man, he's freaking fat. He's a freak of nature. You see him, like, the way he moves is so beautiful. Demetrius Johnson. Fuck. Is it his intuition or is it deduction that he can... All the great guys in hockey, Wayne Gretzky, you don't even look. He passed the puck. I'm like, man.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Is there something more than deduction? Of course, some of the atheists will say the logical ways of thinking. I mean, in our world will be like, oh, he practices so much that
he's in a flow state.
Yes, in flow, but flow is not really accepted. It's like, oh, he practices it so much that he knows where the guy is because of the practice, or is it something more like an intuition? That's my question. And that's one of the things that could be interesting. You know what I mean? Is there a way to prove it? And why, if there is a way to prove it, why it's never been done before? Or if it was done, is it secret? Now we get into the CIA, like with all the program, like Stargate and all that.
So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there because it's first of all, there is a lot of evidence showing that psi ability is real. There's a lot of evidence showing that remote viewing is real. If you know where to look. The thing is, it isn't pushed on a mainstream level, and most people won't accept it because of the shifting goalposts a lot of times.
Okay.
So, for instance, the tests that are being done to prove there's a guy. I mean, there's Dean Radin, there's Rupert Sheldrake, and there's
Joseph McMonagle, right?
Joe McMonagle. He's a remote viewer, but the people that studied him, there's the doctor that studied him, who's the chief research physicist, Dr. Edwin May. He has 30 years of data spanning over 6 remote viewers, 30 years of data, right? So he has and he's a research physicist. So he has a clear line. And his line, and normally if you see something over time like this, you see the line go down, right? Or because it's just like, his is a straight line, like Joe McMonagle, straight all the way through in terms of his testing. Never
what do you mean? The line is the success?
Yes, correct. It's a straight line.
How come it's not freaking public? That's what, it's very frustrating because I want to believe, Chris. I really want to. But my freaking the logical part of my brain is like, if there's no evidence, is not true. Like
So there is a lot of evidence. There is actually a ton of evidence. There are a lot of books out there too, and I can point you towards those books of studies that are peer reviewed even. Dr. Daryl Bem did amazing studies on precognition. That was proven. They did this test, I think, 93 times or something, and thousands of people. Like, this was a real test that was done
on a remote viewing. You talk.
This was on precognition.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Seeing the future.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so,
foresee something that did not happen yet.
But on a minuscule level, right? On a scientific, like, how can we prove this? And a lot of that has to do with what you were saying, with like this instinct, right? And so what they would do is they would like flash these images on these people. They had them hooked up to like, EEG machines or whatever they were. And they would flash images. Some were positive and some were negative. Okay. And they would measure the brainwave activity. When the images were negative, they would see a spike in their brainwave functions fractions of a second before the image was shown.
Wow.
Yes. And they did this over and over and over and over.
And is it peer review?
Yes, it is peer review.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. But it's so minute. Rupert Sheldrake did a test, and this as well. He wrote a whole book on this. Very fascinating. But it was the connection between dogs and their owners and how some of them seem to have some type of psychic connection. And so the way that they tested this, they had the dogs at home, and they gave the person a pager who was out of the home. And at a random time, they would page them to go home, okay? And they would go home in a different way, not normal way, like not with their car. It would be somebody else's car or a bike or a bus or something. And they would page them at a random time during the day. Well, the second they paged them, a lot of these dogs would get up off the couch and run to the door. As soon as the intention of the person was to go home, the dogs would come to the door over and over again.
Really?
And not only that, halfway to their home, they would page them again to turn back. The dog would go back on the couch or whatever. And so they did this over and over, and they found that some of these dogs do have this consciousness connection. There's something more there. And so
it's not only humans.
No, it seems to be a field, some type of field. So it's not a frequency, but some type of instantaneous field where intention is really, really, really strong. And to go back to like the instinctive thing, Joe McMoneagle talks a lot about that. He thinks remote viewing or precognition was due to us having to survive. And, a lot of times, where's the water? You'd go to see the shaman, and the shaman would tell you where the water is. And the most important, the most powerful person in the tribes, a lot of times, weren't the strongest.
No.
They were the most psychic.
According to the lore, when you dive into that sort of rabbit hole, the kids that have autism and problem to communicate verbally seems to be more prone to develop those abilities.
Yeah, like in the telepathy tapes.
Yes. It makes sense. I from my perspective, I remember when I fight someone, when I'm in, they call it the zone. And once again, it could be deduction or intuition. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I used to sort of know what the guy is going to do. Like I'm in his head and takedowns and, it's hard to explain. Even though when I was fighting, I sort of do it, but I don't know if it's by deduction because I've seen this pattern, but everybody's body is different, or it's intuition sort of. And my question is, which ability is to foresee the future is one, remote viewing is another one, to go somewhere, right? And is there did they have telepathy, like communication, or do they have telekinesis, or what is it exactly proven by pure review in that regard?
So there is precognition that has been peer reviewed that you can look at.
Precognition is the future.
Exactly.
Okay.
But also remote viewing, there's been a lot of case studies, especially with Dr. Edwin May. He put out volumes, I think 2 million words he published on the actual tests, giving you the actual test, what he did, what the results were over time, the wins, the losses, everything. And you have it all there. And sometimes it's just incredible when you look at the data itself. You're like, wait a second.
It could be a coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence.
I mean, the p-value. Statistically, an anomaly.
It's okay.
Yeah, statistically, it's in the like the millions. Like, it doesn't make sense.
And
it's
this is per
Yes.
pure review. It's
Yes.
it's how do you say indeniable, you know?
Yeah, undeniable. Yep.
Undeniable. Yes.
Yes, this is, and the work is available. I did, a whole deep dive onto this stuff. It is available, but the problem is that when you go towards certain people who are gatekeeping a lot of the parapsychology, what's happening is that the goalposts are shifting with these people. So if you say to them, what do I need to do to prove to you that remote viewing's real? Okay. They say, okay, make sure the p-value, so the statistical value, is higher than this. We also want these type of tests done. You say, okay. So they do those tests, and then they present them. And they're like, here you go. And they go, there must be something wrong.
Huh.
There must be something wrong. Do it again. But here, let's make the p-value like this. And then they do it. And they keep shifting these, and
And one of the reasons why since I met you, it's not a long time ago. It's like a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's your field of expertise. You're in a way, you're a magician, like a wizard, because that's what you do. You do the shows. So if someone would know, it would be you. I remember I watched James Randi. He used to be he used to debunk.
Yes.
And he used even himself saying like, hey, I'm a con man, but I will fool you and you will not know that I fool you because you will be fooled. And in the same way, if you would be fake, you would know because that's what you do, because of your expertise.
Yes.
You're used to.
And there is a lot of fakery.
Of course, that's because that's the magic. That's the beauty of a magic trick. But that's perhaps one of the reasons why a lot of people are skeptic. They're like, yeah, but I've seen these sort of magic trick. But you've seen a lot more than an average person, because that's your field of expertise. You dive into this and you believe in it. So it's kind of crazy for me to believe that you believe in it.
Yeah.
Because if someone would know, it would be you. You know what I mean? You work with the David Copperfield and all these guys. Like, man, you cannot. It doesn't get bigger than this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not that I went into it believing. That's the other thing. Is that
you did not before?
No, of course not.
Really?
Yes, of course. That's why I did the whole remote viewing thing. I studied remote viewing for a year. We documented the whole process, and we were starting to get results that were really, really accurate. And we're like, man, there is something here. Hold on. And then visiting these people and talking to these physicists and going back to, I met Joe McMoneagle, I met Ed Dames, Uri Geller I spoke with even.
Uri Geller, he was debunked, I think, by James Randi, but I would like to hear his side of the story because I only hear one side.
It's tough with him.
Yeah.
Because he's also a showman. And
he does that for a living.
Yeah, and he's always played that blurry between the lines thing, is like, he wouldn't answer questions like, oh, we're going to use my spoons, or like it was always like some, and magicians know him very well. He's a known magician among magicians, right? And so I know how to bend spoons, in a way that makes it look like they're bending on their own through illusion, right? Now, the question becomes, when you have somebody who can have someone who's practiced that ability to make it look like they're bending spoons, now tell you, but also there's real spoon bending. You're like, then it kind of like muddies up the water, where you're like, I don't know if I can believe what you're saying now, because you're also showing me tricks and telling me they're real. But now you're telling me there's real. And I'm like, that's something I have to try for myself now, because I don't know if I can believe you.
I've seen, for example, James Randi, when he went to the church, Popov, he was a miracle healer. He was like miracle crusade. And he was, he had a mic, and a hairpiece, and he knew by reading the prayer of all the faithful before the mass that, I'm sitting in this row, I have a cancer, and he used to be like, Marilyn, sitting in row 6, number 5, you have like a cancer, and I will cure. Like, this is insane to use that to. I know placebo effect is a real thing, but you're not gonna freaking cure cancer with that. But that makes it look very bad. Yeah. My question is, is there a moment that you said you were very skeptic in the beginning? Is there a moment that you were like, holy shit, this thing is real? Like me in Washington when they freaking confirm it to me. Like there's something going on, and it's we cannot explain. I don't know what it is, but we cannot explain. Is there a moment that it hit you like it crazy?
There were several moments. It was a slow burn for me. Because I was very, again, I was very like, okay, I can explain that with coincidence or confirmation bias or like, but then when I started doing it myself, I started getting really close results and they were pretty consistent.
Can you explain for me or people that are not aware, like how those experiences are made, like in which context that they're like remote viewing, right? Or how do you perform these sort of thing? If someone want to try it at home to see if he can do it or
you would. So first of all, like there's different ways to do it. The way that we did it was my friend would take an image, a random generated image from the internet. He would fold it up, put it in an envelope, a sealed envelope, and write like a 6-digit random number on the envelope. He would then give me the 6-digit number, and I start there.
So you mean you see the digit?
Yeah, I see the numbers.
And the digit is linked to an image that you do not see.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's all I have. And so you're not trying to decipher what that number is. It just gives you a point of reference non-locally.
Okay.
To the image, right?
It could be anything.
Yeah.
And you have no clue of what it is. No.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It could be anything from a bumblebee to a bicycle to the CN Tower to somebody playing soccer. Like it's really anything.
Okay.
And you would then, there's like a series, and this was taught, I learned the method that was like kind of taught in the CIA, which is like sort of this controlled remote viewing where you have different stages. So stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and et cetera. And stage 1, you would scribble like this little ideogram. It's like a little scribble. Then you would describe that. And then after that, you would go into descriptors. And so now we're talking, what do you perceive? So when you're in this calm state, you're just trying to perceive things. So you're calming your mind. And you're like, what do I smell? What do I see? What does it feel like? What's the texture? Is there a sound? Is there a movement? Is there an energy? Is there a feeling? What's the gestalt? Like, what is this? Does this feel like an open space? Does this feel like a building or a life form? And you would just kind of like perceive and just go on intuition and just kind of like, and just go and just not even think about it.
Just start drawing stuff.
We start writing all these things down first. So you're just describing windy, steel, metal, taste of metal. I feel this like fuzzy, also this warmth and like
you don't do the image. You write words.
Yeah,
okay.
You're writing descriptions of like what this feels like, and you're going and going and going. And after that, when you're like, okay, now you go into drawing. Now you're like, okay, and you're not trying to draw something specific. You're just drawing what your perception is. You're kind of like just going with it. Because the last thing you want to do is, we call this AOL, analytical overlay. You don't want, like, if I have yellow, black, fuzzy, buzzing, now I'm going to think bumblebee, right? And that's a bad thing to do. So you don't want to, but automatically your brain will go to bumblebee.
Yeah.
And that's an AOL. So you want
by deduction.
Exactly. So you want that out of the way. So you'll write bumblebee as an AOL just to kind of like get it out of your mind and keep going. And when you're drawing, it's hard to do, but like when you can...
I'm sorry when you say bumblebee AOL, you put AOL like next to it to know that is scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
So you would just sometimes just get it out of the way, but other times it would keep coming back, and you're like, okay, it's something there, and it would turn out to be a bumblebee. You know, so it's like hard to really discern what was what. And then you go into more descriptors after that, and after you're done, you pretty much end your session. You take out the photo and you look at the data and you try to compare. And then you evaluate. We'd give ourselves a score on 0 to 10 on how close we were. I don't think I ever gave myself above 7 because I'm very much confirmation biased. And I'm like, you know, so we would look at it together and try to, but sometimes you're like, man, like, oh my God. And there wasn't one thing I wrote down that wasn't part of the image, you know? And then you're like, I could have said, like, this could have been anything.
Yeah.
So when that happens over and over, and by the way, while you're doing it, you're like, sometimes you're like, this is like, not while you're doing it, but right after you're done, when you're about to open the envelope, you go, this is so silly.
Yeah.
This is going to be all wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to look like such an idiot when this is opened. And then you open it, you go, oh my God. And it really shocks you. It's like a magic trick that you did to yourself.
Wow. And this whole thing, how long it takes, for example, if you want to do the experiment at home with...
like 20 minutes, maybe.
Okay, so it's everybody can make an... And how do you differ, for example, like, I don't know the exact term in English. Like, when you look at a cloud, it's pareidolia.
Yep, pareidolia.
You make something out of the cloud that look like. How do you differ from, for example, the word you wrote down are sort of but it could have been anything. How do you differ that, like, to?
So that's where the confirmation bias comes in. And
Okay,
that's where you have to, like, sort of like look at things really objectively and be like, is, like, okay, that could have been that could have been that. But sometimes it's very specific.
perhaps you need to give it to someone that is outside of the experiment and see if he makes a connection, right?
Normally, that's what they did at SRI during the Stargate project. What would happen, and this is really interesting too, there's a whole study on this as well, because they don't know whether you're actually perceiving the target or you're perceiving the image of the target. So
The image of the target.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
what they're thinking is that because time behaves very differently too. And so a lot of these like Stargate people, 90% of their remote viewing things that they did for these like 17 out of the 19 agencies.
Stargate is the
Stargate is a program.
the program by the CIA that was in the 70s, right?
Yep.
Okay.
70s and 80s. And 17 of the 19 intelligence agencies of the United States used the Stargate program at one point. All right. Some of them came back over 100 times. There was 505 individual missions done over the 17 out of the 19 agencies with Stargate in 20 years. So we know, and Joint Task Force was one of the big ones, FBI. And so there's a lot of, like, people using this stuff. The thing is, the people doing this, the remote viewers, they would never be getting the target. They would never know, because it creates a feedback loop. So they don't know if they did well.
No way.
Yeah, they because first of all, it's a top secret mission, so you can't be briefed on it, right?
No freaking way.
And so they would do it, and the only way that they knew that it was successful is that this agency came back for a different mission.
No
again
freaking
and again
way.
and again and again. Yeah, because they know that even if you see the target 30 years later, right?
Yeah.
And finally you get to see that remote viewing session you did back in the 70s. Now you've changed it. Now you've created a feedback loop to where, were you remote viewing the moment you looked at the target in the future? Or were you remote viewing the event? Right? So it's a very strange.
Are you kidding me?
It's very strange, because there have been times with Angela Ford, one time they asked her, like, hey, okay, here's the target, whatever. She starts drawing, like, this big drum, sort of like this circle and this and that, and like all these, and she's like, it's a water purification plant. And she's like, here's the diameter, and she's meters of diameter of things, and everything is, like, perfectly laid out. And then she goes, yeah, water. And they're like, sorry, no, it's a water park. They're like, close. You got close to water park. And then she's like, something doesn't sit well with me. They started doing research. Well, 50 years before that water park was there, it was a water purification plant. They pulled up a picture. The picture of the water purification plant matched her remote viewing almost one for one in size and everything. You could almost lay it over. That's how close it was. So now they're thinking, okay, did you go back in time and remote view, or did you go forward in time and see the picture that we pulled up?
Oh my God.
Very strange.
Oh my God. Yeah, so that's crazy. I mean,
so it becomes that's a lot of times, like,
wow.
Remote viewers like Joe McMoneagle did not want to see the target ever.
Yeah, it will affect. Yeah.
Yes, he always said that. Always, he was very stern. Never show me, never tell me anything.
They know some of them were very successful, like Ego Swan. Joe McMoneagle is one. I think, is he the only one alive now that is from that Stargate, right?
From the original, yeah.
And the reason, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why they started this program in the first place is because during the Cold War, they found out the Russian were doing it.
The Russians,
because the Russian learned something from the German, perhaps that they were doing before during the Second World War, before the Second World War. So they want to get that knowledge, and the American, like, hey, they start doing it, we got to do it too, right?
Yep, pretty much exactly. The Russians leaked purposely, it was thought, information about experiments they did with rats, to where they tattooed all these rats, and then they tried to predict which rat would die first. They put them up in mountains and whatever, and it it was very, very accurate. But turns out, and Joe McMoneagle talks about this, that it was the guy who tattooed the rats that was actually psychic, because it was the order that he tattooed them in. And it was a very bizarre test, but that's what initially got leaked. But yeah, those psionic type programs existed before Stargate. You know, there was Center Lane, Grill Flame, Sunstreak. These were all psychic programs.
It's you think it continues
Of
to
course.
still this day?
Yes, yes.
That's what I've been told. And wow, do you think? I mean, one of the reason it's not public, it's because they don't want everybody to know about it, because it could be used as a weapon if it's in the wrong hand. If someone becomes very good at it, I mean, it could be like, the implication of this is pretty freaking crazy. I mean, imagine if it turns out to someone can enhance that power and be very good at it. Like, I mean, what's that? What can you do with it? It's
and that
you
is
can know where the
problem.
secret base are. I mean, I know. I mean, according to the lore, certain peoples have been used to locate certain bases and people, like other people as well for extraction. I mean. And those people that have done that work, they never knew. For example, for the American, they never knew if their result were good or not.
So sometimes, because they would have to, like for certain exceptions, but normally no. Normally like 95%. And the main reason isn't because of the feedback loop. It's also a reason, but the main reason was because they were classified projects. So like the CIA, or let's say I don't know, Joint Task Force. They would, be trying to intercept the drug cartel coming in through the coast. And the Joint Task Force came back, I think, 141 times with new missions.
Wow.
Because apparently they were intercepting a lot of drug boats.
Really?
Using remote viewers, yeah. But
that is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, man, I want to believe, Chris. I really want to. And it's just like there's a thing in my brain that bullshit. But man, I it's hard to have an argument when you have these results. You know, like when they come back and they ask. I mean, there's a reason why. But until someone does not use like a Star Wars, the Force, you know what I mean?
But even that,
I remain a little bit skeptic. And even if you would do that to me, I would be like, this freaking guy is a wizard. He's got a trick. And like, there's like a rope connected or it's hard. And then the same time, I believe, I mean, according to the lore, if you dive into that rabbit hole, I think there's a lot of disinformation campaign surrounding UAPs, psionic stuff, right? I think there is
definitely, yeah.
Because the organization that use these things that works on it, they don't want everybody to have access to it, right? So they perhaps use this information campaign to discredit the validity of the one that are real, right?
Correct, 100%. You don't want to put that past them. It's they are the smartest intelligence agencies. You know, they have all the money. The military has all the money. And they're going right to, out of university, grabbing Mensa level geniuses and grabbing the best Ivy League intelligence people out of school and recruiting them into these 3-letter agencies. So of course, they got the smartest people working on this, and their whole job is to figure out every variable, right? So like every scenario possible. Like I guarantee you, they've got probably a dozen doomsday scenarios of what if zombies, they have everything, right? So for sure, anything we speculate, they've probably thought of. We're not faster than them.
Yeah, I mean, talking to Lazar, Louis Elizondo, and all the guys I've met during my trip in Washington, one thing a lot of them told me is that everything is very compartmentalized.
Yes.
So nobody really know the entire picture. I mean, there must be someone. I mean, one thing I've been told is, like the last president to have been briefed on this matter is George Bush Sr.
Yeah,
because he was in
head of the CIA.
The head of CIA. But after that, because a president in the United States, for example, is the most powerful man on earth. People say, is he really? But he comes in and goes every 4 years.
Yep.
So if they tell him everything, maybe he's gonna spill the bean. Like it's also for a security reason, you know, like you never know if he, you know, mental illness, he become crazy, he just say the out loud the secret that that protect North America or, you know, the United States or.
Also a plausible deniability.
Yeah.
So there's a reason they don't tell the president, because if something comes out and the president during a press conference, they go, hey, what about UAPs? He has to lie now in front of people, right? So it's better to not tell him because he has plausible deniability. He can say, I didn't know if anything goes wrong.
God, man, I want to believe, but oh man, it's hard. It's hard until you don't have the perfect evidence, but I want to believe, man. I really, that's a problem. I want to believe, but that does not make it true. You know, sometimes when you want something to happen, you see it from your perceptions linked everything towards that, but that doesn't mean it's really what is happening. God, I really want to believe. And one guy I mean, because of the war, and I might be point out by the finger saying this, but fuck it, I'm going to say it. One guy I would like to ask the question, and I think one person that would know the most of this answer is maybe Vladimir Putin.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the KGB.
Yes.
And I think he would know. If there's someone that knows a lot about this, so that would be him.
Yes, 100%.
And I can promise you, if I ever meet him, I will ask him the question. I will, even if I look like an idiot, and, you know, I would freaking do it. And I don't know if I will be able to say what he told me if I have a chance. But man, that would be like, if I meet someone like him, I would freaking ask him. Like I would say, can I talk to you for a second one-on-one? I will. Maybe he's not gonna say it to me the truth, or maybe he will, thinking that, oh, I'm gonna say it to him. Because even if he comes out public, it's like maybe like the guys in Washington, maybe that's the way they were thinking, explaining to me the whole thing. Is like, oh, if he come out public and say everything that we told him, he's gonna hurt his credibility. Yeah. So he's not gonna say it regardless, you know, unless he's a fool, you know.
Yeah. Or maybe it softens the blow. Maybe it's like, oh, let him say it first.
Yeah, but man, I'm not the one who's gonna say it. Now the people gonna think I'm brain damaged big time if I, you know what I mean? But that's fascinating.
Putin definitely knows, by the way, and so does the president of China as well. And these guys have been in power for too long.
The president of China, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
So Putin, the president of China, is George Bush Sr. still alive? Right?
I don't think so.
Is he? I'm sorry for my.
I don't even know. That's a good question.
I'm
maybe
not sure
if Mandela effect.
He would maybe know.
Is George Bush Sr. still alive? We're both Canadian, so we can be forgiven on. No, 2018. Yeah.
You know Paul Hellyer.
Yeah.
The former
defense minister of Canada.
Yeah, came out publicly saying crazy claims. Oh. And this is a fact. He says that we're not alone. There's even like
63.
That's freaking insane. Like, did he lost his mind, or does he have strong evidence, or he says that he
psyoped?
Man, it's hard to know now, but man, there's a lot of credible people that came up publicly. One of the, I think, an Israeli,
Ayahuasca. Yeah.
Like, what is his position?
He was the Israeli space, in charge of the Israeli space program. He's the father of the Israeli space programs. He put up 13 satellites into space. And he was awarded the highest awards by military and civilian awards for some of his things. And the awards that he got in the military side are classified. We don't know why he got those awards, but he got the awards. We don't know what the awards are for. So he's a credible source. And
what did he say exactly? He says that there's a galactic federation.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like Star Wars, man.
So did Paul Hellyer said the same thing. And now, you know, who knows, because... The other thing is, George,
crazy,
that we have to understand is that there are people who are fascinated with this topic that work in the government too, right? So they're human. These people, you know, there are some people who want to believe that are in governments. These people aren't perfect. So, you know, when I think of like even Stargate, there was General, I'm forgetting his name. He was a Stubblebine. And he loved the remote viewing stuff. He was like, you know, but he loved it too much to where they were like, all right, we're going to make you retire now. Because it's like you're going in too deep. you want to believe too much, and now there's this bias.
It affects your judgment.
So Chaim Ashed is friends with Uri Geller, very close friends, right? So in my head, I instantly, that's a bit of a red flag for me. Even though Uri Geller, some of the claims he has, I believe could be true, I still think that there's this sensationalist ideology that might exist here that might skew a little bit of the information that they're given, and because they're in a position where we would trust them, they can say anything, and now we kind of take it as the word, right? And I think we need to be careful with that too, because I think in our government, and especially in the Republican side of the government, there's a lot of faith-based culture.
Yes.
And so
dangerous.
Yeah. And so, when you're talking about NHI and all of this, it gets to a place where some of them want to believe more than others.
Yeah.
And we just have to be aware of that too. So it's like, yes, on one hand, it's very hard to get clean information.
Yeah.
Which is why I think the best thing that we can do, you and I and the people watching, is try these things for ourselves. Try remote viewing, try out-of-body experiences, go into a field and try to CE5 a UFO, or, do these experiences yourself, because no matter what I tell you, no matter how much data I show you or what type of trick I can do for you, it's not going to convince you unless you see it yourself, right?
One of the arguments that a lot of scientists will say to counter the existence of NHI, non-human intelligence, that would be like, oh, where are the evidence, the cell phone? I'm like, there's freaking tons of it, bro. There's tons of video that people film the orbs, but all those videos, that they're not clear. Like, they're not like if I would film you like this, like they're sort of blurry. Or if you look at the UFO, most of the time you see the edge is sort of blurry, and the explanation, according to ufologists, they would say, oh, it's because the distortion of space and time in which these vehicles are functioning with. I'm like, shit, I want it to be true, man. I will continue my quest in the pursuit of truth, but frick, man, it's hard to know. It's hard to.
But it's fun.
Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But talking to a lot of the people in that field, through all these years, I mean, apparently there's two schools of thought. There's a group of people that really want full disclosure on that matter, because they're concerned. They have kids. They're concerned about the future. And a lot of the guys in Washington have talked, they want full disclosure. And there's another group apparently too that do not want disclosure, because a lot of people, they harm a lot of people, and they will be accounted for a lot of the pain, a lot of the things they've done. And I hope it's not the case, but maybe we will have to wait until those people that are accounted for the harm they've done passed out before we move to a full disclosure. I don't know, but...
Yeah, like there's the cover-up is covering up the crimes.
Yes, like a little bit like the JFK file that soon will be probably public. They say, one of the arguments I think is Trump was saying is he needs to wait that all the people passed out, because a lot of harm has been done, but you don't want to tarnish the reputation of a living person. You want to wait that it's finished until you. I mean, is it true or not? I don't know.
You also have the families of those people, like the Bush family is still around.
I don't know if it's Trump who said it, or if it's someone that said it, that he said it. Like that's the consensus on it. But is it the same thing with disclosure? Because if you dive into this thing, and from I've learned, a lot of people got hurt, man. They did a lot of bad stuff to acquire knowledge and control. And if the whole thing is real, it's freaking dark, man. Yeah,
dark, scary. I mean, there's the one thing I always come back to that always like kind of glitches in my head is like the people who want to know want everyone to know. And then the people who know want no one to know.
Yeah.
So if I take that information, I look at it and I'm like, what is so bad about the information that once you understand what it is, you don't want anyone else to know about it? And that's a scary like thought experiment to be like, damn, what could that be?
Yeah.
And you know what I keep thinking back to, and more as this goes on, is like, you see 3 body problem?
No.
So Three Body Problem is a book that they did, which eventually turned into a Netflix thing. And it's the idea that this civilization that is far away receives a signal. And it's kind of like the alone in the forest theory, where like you don't want to make noise in the forest because if a predator sees you, he's going to come towards you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. And now they sent us a message saying like, all right, you got 40 years and we'll be there in 40 years. We're on our way.
Yeah.
And now we've got 40 years to figure this problem out before they get here and advance our tech. And like, I mean, it's all science fiction, but who knows?
Look, man, there's something attached to this that a lot of the people that have studied that phenomenon believe that since the invention and the detonation of the atomic bomb, a lot of the sensitive military installation, and even a lot of the guys confirmed it. They think that a lot of the sensitive military installation that contain nuclear weapon are monitored by these things. And apparently, according to report, like real report, they have the capability, these UAP, to shut it off or put it on as they wish, to control remotely. On and off switch, like a on and off switch, like these freaking installation. That is fucking crazy, man. If it turns out to be true, I mean, the report are there.
Yep, the report's
it's
there.
supposed
in
to
Russia and America.
And that's the thing. In a court of law, this would be enough to be an evidence for it to be true. But because that subject is so stigmatized, man, it's so
there's even
crazy.
An agreement between Russia and America. Pull this up with Lou. We looked at it. There's an agreement. There's all sorts of agreements. Like if they start their nuclear thing, like they have to let us know. There's like this whole thing. And on one of the stipulations, it says they have to call each other if ever an unidentified object is picked up on radar, because they don't want to mistake it for an attack.
Oof.
So and it says for any unidentified objects, like they have to like pick up the phone and be like, was that you? You know, and they're like, no, that wasn't us. They're like, okay, it was a UFO, and like kind of like scratch that off. So like it's been a problem for them apparently.
I would just put it out there. I mean, if there's a disclosure coming up publicly, as a public figure, I'm ready to, say what I know. You know what I mean? Because I don't have, I'm just a freaking I'm a retired athlete. I'm not an astrophysicist, but to make the subject more volatile for people, to bring eyeballs on the subject, I'm ready to, to help disclosure, because I think it's important. I think it could change the world for the best. But I'm not ready to go by myself in the front line, because, man, if you do that, your credibility, you will be attacked like freaking crazy. And I still don't know for a fact. What I've heard and learned, did they mess up with me? Is it a freaking joke? Because people make jokes sometimes or whatever, like it's a very interesting thing, man. But I really love to dive into it, and it's man, I really hope, and according to a lot of people I've talked, and I'm sure you did, in our living, we will have undeniable proof that there's something, and I just can't wait this happen.
Maybe even sooner than later.
I think so.
George, I have one last thing we're gonna do here. Well, two last things. I would love for you to sign these books in a second.
Of course.
And we're gonna do some giveaways. One of them's for me, and then two of them's for the audience here. But before we get into that, we have Patreon members or members.
Of course.
Basically, we call them interns.
Yes.
And we let them ask. I choose 3 questions.
For sure.
And we're gonna pull it up here. And give me a second. I have to turn this camera on back here, and we'll get started. All right. Thank you. All right, so the first question we have here is picture a secret tunnel is his handle, and it's going to come up right behind me. In your research in archaeology, have you found anything resembling giant humanoids?
Well, there's a lot of text that talks about it, like the Anunnaki,
Mhm.
the Nephilim,
Yep.
even in Christianity. Is it true or not? I want it to be true, but just because I want it doesn't make it true. It's all about an interpretation.
Mhm.
If you look at the Sumerian text, there's different interpretation. There's one interpretation made by Zachariah Sitchin that talks about the Anunnaki, that he believes that there was a race of aliens
Yeah.
that were giant that engineered us, and it's a long, it's in a nutshell. That's what he believes. But he was attacked by a lot of people, and a lot of people tried to debunk him, and some of the things he said turns out to be, some of the things he says, it's hard to dismiss, now in the future, like, turns out to be real. Like I think the asteroid belt and the formation of the Tiamat, Marduk, so it's hard to differ what is real, what is not, and what is what is an interpretation, or I wanted to believe, but yeah, it's a trend amongst certain ancient texts, the interpretation of certain ancient texts, that maybe once upon a time it was like a giant, but I think we need to have strong evidence. I know there's a lot of things online that says, oh, they found bones of giant, but man, why is it hidden?
Yeah, where is that?
Yeah, man, why you don't put it out? Like, and there's a conspiracy, like, oh, they hide it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know what.
Well, there's the Afghan giant. Was the Afghan? Remember that story of like
they're the soldier.
Yeah,
they all have red hair. I mean,
yeah, they shot down this 13-foot tall, like, apparently killed one with a spear, and then they just mowed him down and helicoptered him out. What was interesting about that is that, first of all, it happened in modern era, and there were a lot of people that came out on like Coast to Coast AM talking about that they've seen it, which is like military people, which is interesting. But again, like you said,
that's crazy, man.
Give us a picture, give us something.
Give us something, man.
Yeah.
Why there's no freaking strong evidence? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what to make of it. I don't want to be the first to go publicly saying, oh, I believe in it or not, because I don't. I think I'm very skeptic.
Yeah.
I entertain the idea of it. It would be cool, but I don't fully believe in it. I mean, it's interesting. I read a lot about it. It's not something that when I see an article about it, it's not something that I'm like, immediately that's bullshit. I like to read it just to amuse me. And then I'm like, it's interesting. I keep it in the back of my head, but I don't fully believe it.
That's the best
and I don't
way.
reject it either. I just put it on the side. You know what I mean?
That's the healthiest way, I think, to approach a lot of this thing. And I think a lot of people could learn from that, because, being extreme one way or the other is no good. Staying, in a relatively realistic, ideology, I think that's probably.
I agree.
All right. We have next here, Maverick Star. We talked about this. So this is an interesting question. You actually had mentioned this, so I guess we've already answered this, but have you ever felt as if you knew what was going to happen in a fight before it did?
Yes. Sometime in fights when you're in the zone, and being in the zone is not too much. It's not too much, being too much focus. Because if you're too focused, you lose how much time there is on the clock. You lose what your coach are saying to you, because they have a different perspective, and it's important to hear. You lose also because I speak English. I speak a little bit of Portuguese, and Spanish I can understand sometimes, like the basic. Yes.
Corner. Oh.
So it's an advantage for me, because they don't understand me, but I understand them.
Wow.
So I know when they say, for example, I'm on the ground. Cotovel is an elbow, or shaft de bras, like an arm bar. Like, I know when they're calling something, they're gonna try something. I know before it comes. So is it because it's deduction? When you're in the states of flow, you don't want to be, like I said, too focused, because you miss those cues. And you don't want to be too distracted because you can get caught with something you don't see coming. You want to be in the flow zone. I don't know if it's because
Do you feel it though? Do you feel like
I feel it, but I have no evidence to prove you it's an intuition more than a deduction. You know, it's interesting because I felt when I'm in that state, the best of that state, it's when my fighter's flight, when I'm the most afraid, because it triggers something very basic to my core. And maybe it link to the reason why the psionic team, apparently they try to recruit kids that are autism, that don't have the ability to speak, and that are in a very poor and dangerous environment, maybe after a disaster. That's why they recruit those. Maybe that's the case, because I know that when I'm scared and it triggers something survival, I get into that state better. So that's why when I say I'm not afraid to admit that I'm afraid, it's because I know that my fear will enhance me and I embrace it. Some people, the fear, it paralyzes them. Me, I'm like, I fucking love it. I don't love it, but I know I need it to be at my best.
Wow.
So I embrace it.
That's so sick.
That's how you need to think when you go into a fight.
I
because
love that.
you need to learn how to control it.
That's, I mean, it's really interesting. I could talk about this for like forever, but like during like remote viewing stuff and even psionic stuff, Jake Barber talked about like they would, a way to shortcut the psionic is to add trauma. And so to put you in a state of fear. And so he mentioned that.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
That could be interesting.
His interview with Jesse Michaels.
Oh, yeah. He said that the fighter's flight thing.
They would induce fear. They would induce, like, actively give them drugs to be more, like, afraid and then calm them and then, like, play this line.
Because that maybe the reptilian part of your brain kicks in and
has access to the survival. And sometimes in order to survive, you have to know what's going to happen a second in the future, right? And so that's kind of like where they're trying to tap into. And in remote viewing, all of the most successful remote viewings happened when it was human life at stake, or when there was like a large amount of entropy, big change. So that's why they would have a really easy time finding nukes with this stuff. So it's like, it's almost like the universe wants you to survive, and you are the universe. So you're tapping into that to help you survive, help you evolve, help you see forward a little bit, just to give you that edge of probability on that quantum scale to help you get to that next level that you want to get to, right? So it's very, very small, but I mean, I think nonetheless,
that's a very interesting theory. And I mean, if you believe in that stuff, it makes sense. I mean, I wanted to believe and I wanted to be true, and maybe that's one of the reasons I was doing so well in my career, because maybe
you tapped into this.
I tapped into this, or maybe it's because by pure hard work and training, I've seen devil's pattern, and I was by deduction,
like an AI type of.
But maybe it's something else. I don't have the answer. I've done it, but I don't have the answer, and I wish I could. And I want to learn more about it to, like I told you, like to tap into this thing if it is the case, if it really, if there is something to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing to do too, is check it out for yourself. Last question here. And I think this is by, I think I forget I forget your name, but I don't think there was enough room on the split flap. It says, is information or alternative theories being suppressed in the mainstream archaeology community?
I think so. And the reason is, let's talk about Göbekli Tepe. It's, now they know it's at least like almost, it's 11,600 or 12, I mean, around 12,000 years ago. Before that, before it was discovered, it was to the mind of archaeologists, it was impossible that hunter-gatherer could build these sort of things, because in their mind, they needed to have agriculture to settle themselves, to have abundance of food before they can do certain things like this. Like Göbekli Tepe, it's an incredible site. It's pillars with carvings of animal, and it's an alignment of an astronomical alignment that is unbelievable. I think a big part of it is still not uncovered yet, so we don't know what it is, what the full thing, the full site look like. But from what they have discovered, it changes everything that we knew about our ancestor. So in the mainstream, if all your life you spend time to follow one narrative, and now out of sudden, boom, the whole thing changes. If you attach certain emotional, if you attach certain emotion to what you read, it could be bad because you're attached to that truth, and now that truth is no longer real. And I think a lot of, not all, but I think certain maybe archaeologists could have an issue detaching emotionally from an ideology that they've been fed all their career, and you have to accept the fact that shit, there's something new now. We need to change. I mean, I'm sure, I know that a good archaeologist do that. You know, the one they do it. They go only with fact check. They attach no emotion, because then it's only an idea. You know, if you've been taught something and you teach it, and you found out it's wrong, it takes a lot of ego, you have to work on your ego, telling, hey, finally what I taught you is wrong. We learned recently that this is what happened. I mean there's a lot of emotion and money link into that story. So when something changed the old paradigm, it shaked up a lot of people. Same thing with Clovis first. You know, in archaeology, before they thought that humans, it was a fulsome point. The point of the spear, they thought human came in only a few thousand years in America. Then they found out, it got pushed back by the Clovis. Now they know that Clovis first, it was sort of a doctrine. It was like it's impossible. You're never gonna find any older remain of humans before Clovis, because there were no any Clovis. It was like a doctrine, like Graham and Koch talk about it, and they freaking found some that are even older than Clovis. Now they know that there were humans in America before Clovis, and they might find in the future even older. So they keep pushing back the date. And it shook the entire theory of how humans arrive in North America by the Bering Strait. And at the time they arrived, because now what we thought it was turns out to be wrong. It's much older than what we thought. And the more we dig in, the more we find stuff. And I think it's exciting, but for some people it's frustrating. And I don't think you should attach any emotion to this. It's just knowledge,
just information.
Yeah, and what you know sometimes can be turned out to be wrong. Same thing in training, like stuff that I used to do back then, I thought was good. Now I know is wrong, and I change it. You know, I don't attach any emotion. I'm not stubborn saying, no, I'm continue to do this because I want to improve, and then I have to. You know, I have to accept, like, shit, what I was doing was wrong. So, okay, I stopped doing it and I improve. You know, in sport, that's why people ask me very often, is the fighter today's are better than the one in your time? And I think, yes. The reason is not because the guys are better. It's because the knowledge and the technology improve. The humans were we're the same. We're the same human, but our knowledge and technology improve. And therefore, guys got better. They got better performance. And in a sport like combat sport, you cannot measure the result. But for example, in races or lifting, you have data. You know that, for example, Usain Bolt beat Jesse Owen. But did he beat him because he's better? or did they beat him because he had the shoes? He was running on the different surface.
The right training.
Yeah, he also had the departure block that Jesse Owen did not have. He had now they use a lot of technology and knowledge that they didn't have back then.
Yeah.
So if you give that to Jesse Owen, maybe he would have been better than Usain Bolt. Who knows? Maybe not, maybe yes. So it's same thing in combat sport. I believe the performance got better. The future generation will be better. Not because they're really better, just because they have more access to better technology and knowledge.
You think there's a peak to that?
It's a good question.
Can we become like the peak performance athlete?
I'm a purist. I'm against the idea of equipment. I know it's a freaking business, but I think it's wrong.
So you can measure it better?
I think guys should be fighting maybe in a shorts, bare end, like it used to be. I think sprinters should sprint barefoot. No freaking departure block on the same surface they always run, because it affect the data. If you give a better surface, a surface that is harder, that has more respawn when you run, therefore it messed up the result, because the one that didn't run on that surface have a disadvantage. The shoes change everything. The grip of the shoes, the departure block, it gives you the kick in the beginning. I just take race as an example, because more people knows about racing than anything else. But fighting is the same thing. You use performance enhancing drug, or you use different equipment,
skews the data.
It's fuck it up. But we live in a world that we want to see the record being broken. And it's our nature. We want to go further and better and better and better. And I understand it. And it's a lot of money attached to it, to the equipment. It's a business. But as a purist, I don't like to see it. But I have to make up with it, because that's the reality I live in.
Wow. Great answer. I never actually gave that some thought. But yeah, because I've thought about that too. Is Sidney Crosby better than Wayne Gretzky? Is Wayne Gretzky better than Gordie Howe? But it really comes down to, the improvement of equipment, the improvement of how you train, what you're training, and little minute things over time that are shifted a little bit. Yeah. But they're not on an even playing field. So hard to measure. I
went to the Raptors because I give speeches to the team, sometimes to professional team. And man, they have certain technology. The Raptors, for example, they know where they're more likely to score when they take a shot than other place on the field. Like, they have some freaking data that is just unbelievable. So they know that if they pass the ball in that sort of area, and they have a guy that shoots in, they're more likely to because everything is measured. It's freaking crazy.
Wow.
And it's knowledge. Knowledge is a weapon. Knowledge is technology. Knowledge is a weapon. That's how Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, the Romans, that's the Second World War was won because of knowledge and technology. And the same thing in my fights. I had knowledge. I was a very good athlete, but I didn't become champion because I was the best athlete. There's guys that were better athlete than me. There's guy that, I work hard, but I'm sure there's guys that work just as hard and maybe harder than me. I work smart, but there's guys that, that work smart, but I was very lucky to have the influence and certain contact that gave me the knowledge that I have. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why I was successful. And in warfare and in life, even as an entrepreneur, I think it's a key. When you get knowledge and you know how to use it, you can be successful.
I mean, that, and I will say your humility is also something that, yourself, you won't go and talk about, because it's hard to talk about oneself as being humble, but you're a very humble person, and in victory, in all the successes. And I think that as well makes you stand out, not only as an athlete, but as a human being. So I think that's really commendable as well.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Chris. I'm happy we crossed paths, and I got to know you, man. And it's fun, man. It's
Fun ride.
And I'm looking forward these experiment that I'm willing to try to psionic stuff. I'm curious and I want to know if
we'll do some.
If there is something to be done, because you convince me of the possibility. I wouldn't say the true because I don't know if it's true, but the possibility, because my mind was a little bit closed before, but the possibility that could be enhanced, and if that's the case, man, I want to be part of it. I want to know.
Amazing. Georges St-Pierre, merci beaucoup d'avoir parlé avec moi aujourd'hui.
Merci à toi. Merci de m'avoir reçu et aussi de m'avoir présenté Lou Elizondo. Pour moi, c'était très important.
Ben, c'est un grand plaisir, et à tous les fans québécois qui nous écoutent présentement aussi, c'est sûrement un choc de m'entendre parler en français, mais je pense que c'est obligatoire aussi.
I didn't know you speak French before I met you, and you speak like perfect. I was like, shit. I'm like, I didn't know.
Peut-être un jour on fera un autre podcast en français juste pour les Québécois.
Ouais, bien sûr, mais l'audience est plus grande en anglais, c'est normal.
Yeah.
Ouais, absolument.
Thank you, George.
Merci.
Guys, if you want to get one of these signed copies, we're going to be giving 2 away, 1 to the patrons. So if you want to increase your chances, $5 a month, you get some extra content. Check out the memberships or the Patreon, or we're going to also give 1 away to the general comment. So simply leave a comment below and let us know what your favorite part of the interview was. Maybe something you learned about George you didn't before, and I'll pick one of you guys to win these. Thanks so much. All right, George. So this is for me, and this is for the other people here.
Ah, yes.